Hello and welcome back to Lesser Known Operators. Nicholas Allen here, aka the Lesser Known Operator. Today I had a long conversation with Erik Grimsgaard. Erik is a former Green Beret from the 7th Special Forces Group that currently lives in North Carolina. Erik and I did not know one another before the show today, but the conversation and time flew by. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. All right, and here we go. Erik, welcome.
That wasn't
Everybody's
supposed to come out, but we're good. No, I'm just kidding.
oh,
It's all good.
I've had many an alias as well, but welcome. Thank you for coming on. So you're my first guest where I don't know anything about you. I don't know you at all, other than we were in the same group. So not
Well,
group, we're
prepare
in the
to,
same unit.
yeah,
But
prepare to be underwhelmed.
right. So yeah, tell me a little bit. So you said you're currently living down in North Carolina. So yeah, we want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So my name's Erik Grimsgaard. Yeah, currently live in Wake Forest, North Carolina. Got out of the Army and got off active duty the 7th Group in 2010. Um, was still living in Fayetteville, but family was looking forward to moving on from Fayetteville for obvious reasons, and we kind of landed here in Wake Forest out of chance. We found a nice rental place, and that was obviously almost 15 years ago now. So we liked it
Wow.
here and been raised our family here. So it's been nice. Originally from New Jersey though, so a
Okay.
little bit of a change. But frankly, my wife and I had lived in North Carolina at that point long enough that she's from New Jersey as well. That we knew we didn't really want to go back to Jersey. So
Well,
it's a good
better
place to
done
be from.
less.
Yeah, for sure.
But
For sure.
so you said seventh group in 2010. When did seventh go to Florida?
Yeah, so they started moving, I think, in late 2008, 2009, if I remember correctly. When I got out, I was in C-37, and I believe C-37 was the last like unit. I think they kind of did a separate move. They were starting and prepping for the move as I was getting out. I made
Okay.
a decision to get out in Iraq in 2009. It was probably think when I got back was it December timeframe. I think is when I got back. So it's kind of in that fall timeframe of 2009 where I kind of made the decision I was going to ETS.
And then ETS or retire, you said?
ETS, yeah. I was in 18 X-ray, right? So I joined post 9/11. Um, kind of go back. Like I said, grew up in New Jersey. Did the whole high school thing in Jersey, and then went to college in Philadelphia at LaSalle University. Graduated college there with a business degree and just an undergraduate, and started working in like the financial sector. And my goal as a kid was to be a stockbroker. Right, I just wanted to work on Wall Street, make a ton of money. Live that whole fast pace, die young lifestyle. Right. Um, and then like many other guys, September 11th hit home really hard. Where I grew up in New Jersey, I grew up on the shore in Monmouth County. There's another dude actually was from 7th Group that grew up in the same town as me. That I didn't know that until we were on the bus heading to Green Ramp for our first trip to Afghanistan. I was sitting next to him and I was like, "Hey man, we're talking." He'd been in my company and I knew him, but I didn't really know him that well, And turns out were from the same freaking town. He was a year or two older than me, but we were running with the same knuckleheads, same troublemakers in the same town. And then here we are on the freaking flight to Afghanistan together. It's kind of funny, but from the beach, I spent a lot of time on the beach as a kid because I grew up there, and so worked at the beach a lot. Basically from 13 on, I was employed in some way or another working at the beach in the summer, and we could clearly see lower Manhattan from the beach. On a clear day, there's the Twin Towers boom, and I always as a kid look and say, oh, that's where I want to be when I grow up. It was a big thing, obviously, from the area that I grew up. A lot of successful. I came from really nothing, no money, single mom. Struggled to keep the lights on, kind of deal. But a lot of I went to Catholic school, right? So a lot of the kids that went to the schools, parents had decent amount of money. And then, I went to a, all boys Catholic prep school. By the grace of God, I don't know how the hell that happened, but I got in on a waiting list. Ended up getting in because somebody else didn't go, and I'm not really sure how my mom afforded it. I know we got some financial aid, but either way, obviously started to meet a lot of kids who came from a lot of money, a lot of wealth, and most of their parents were working in finance and doing something on Wall Street or something related to banking, right? So I kind of saw that as my way to get out and to be successful. And pursued the college thing and all, did the business thing. And then when September 11th happened, right after I graduated, it was kind of like, I felt personally like these fuckers had just taken, I'm allowed to curse, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I felt like these fuckers had just taken my dream away from me, right? And then, so I started to explore options for the military. Felt immediately like I needed to do something, right? So obviously I had a call.
Now?
This is 2001, late 2001. So
well, yeah, September 11th.
Probably.
When did you graduate?
I graduated in 2000.
Okay.
So it might have been just after, the new year by the time I started to really in earnest look. I can't remember, honestly. It's been a while, but, started to explore things, obviously had a college degree. So, as I started to socialize that with my parents and friends and things like that, everyone was kind of pushing me, oh, you got to be an officer, got to be an officer. You got a college degree, don't waste it, kind of thing. But fine, fair, So started to look at like military intelligence. And of course, my family, my parents did not serve in the military, right? My grandparents both served in World War II. One was a Marine, he's passed away now, so I guess I can say was a Marine. I'm not really sure how that works for Marines.
I don't think they would.
Once a Marine, always
probably...
a Marine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he fought in the Pacific. He was in aviation, and then my other grandfather, my maternal grandfather, was in the Navy, and he fought in the Pacific as well on ships. He was like a gunner on like a LCM, the bigger ones that have like carry the tanks and shit. Yeah, he was on one of those. He ran a gun on one of those. So there was some military aspect in that, and of course, like everybody else, I think that you probably ever talked to in your military career, all I wanted to do as a kid was go out in the woods and gather a group of kids together and play Army, right? And watched all the shows and did all the things, right? So there was always that in the back of my mind, but it wasn't really my career path at that time of my life until September 11th happened, and then I was like, oh shit. I need to get some revenge here. So, started looking at military intelligence, and I actually had a military intelligence like officer recruiter come to my apartment that I lived in Philly at the time, because I was in Philadelphia, and it was actually my roommate and I were actually considering joining up together, and I was unimpressed by the military intelligence officer that came to my apartment. And what I thought about military intelligence was certainly not what, the run of the mill intel guys and gals do on a day-to-day basis. So I was like, yeah, scratch that off the list. That's not for me. Went to the Marine Corps recruiting office and looked at Marine Corps OCS. And I was kind of leaning towards that path, honestly, because I wanted to be more of a war fighter than, back office sort of support roles. Right. So, they were like, hey, this is great. You're a good candidate. However, for anyone who's ever looked at the Marine Corps, I don't know, and it doesn't work this way for enlisted, but for officers, they basically have 3 tracks: air, ground, and law, right? And they were like, yeah, hey, you're great, but they made me sit down against the wall, took some leg measurements. You can't tell in the video I'm 6'4" and I've got like abnormally long legs in proportion to my body. So they were like, air's out for you because your leg dimensions or whatever are too long to fit, because I guess you got to qualify for every airframe in order to go into the program. And so they said, you're not gonna work for air. But we have a law. Ground's closed. We're not accepting any more officer candidates for ground. So you want to be a lawyer? And I said, not for the Marine Corps. I don't. That's not what I'm looking to do. So I walked out of there. And then, honestly, the Army was not really, to be fair and to give credit where credit's due. I don't even know if it's credit, but, basically my family was like, whatever you do, don't join the Army. So my grandfather, who was a Marine, right, was telling me, whatever you do, don't join the Army. And my other grandfather, who's in the Navy, said, whatever you do, don't join the Army. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I won't look at the Army. I didn't really look at the Navy. And then I got back to, so at this time, I was a financial advisor. I was working for UBS Payne Weber in Philadelphia. So I freshly minted right out of like their training pipeline and everything. And I was looking forward to doing that. And then this whole worm was turning in my head, right? So, um, I remember this clearly. I was sitting in front of my, my computer at work, and I was just like, I put down all of the sales leads and everything I was supposed to cold call for the day, and I went to goarmy.com, right, and I started looking at the website just at different careers, and so I ran across the 18 X-ray program, right. It was like, the ads, at least on the website, were cool. Dudes face painted, camoed up, crawling through mud, going
It
on,
was brand new
going
at
on.
the time.
Yeah, it had they resurged it, and I don't know, because like my first team sergeant was what they referred to then as an SF baby, right? So
Yeah.
the 18 X-ray program had been enacted and shut down and enacted and shut down, I guess, over periods of time, and I'm not obviously a historian on that, but like, I don't know when about they started it, but I was an early one of the
Yeah.
early ones. Um, so I saw that, and it basically, at that point, that was it. Like, that's what I wanted to do. Then, I read all the, different, all the different MOS descriptions and things like that. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. So I started talking to recruiters, actually walked out of my office it was in the building. I was on like the 56th floor, right? I'm wearing a suit and tie and a freaking, overcoated, leather soled shoes and shit like that, and probably some silly briefcase. And I go down, get in the elevator, go down. I walk it. This is in Center City, Philadelphia. I walked. There was a recruiting station that was a few blocks away. Walked into the recruiting office. People are looking at me like, who's this fucking guy coming in here in a suit and tie and shit? And I said, I walked up to basically the first guy that had an open desk, and I think he was like an E5, and I
Yeah.
was like, hey, I want to sign up for the 18 X-ray program. And he goes, the what program? I go, the 18 X-ray program, the Special Forces program. He's like, no, you can't do that. You can't just come in here and sign up for this program. So he had no freaking idea what was going on. And I was like, okay, well, if this freaking dude doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, who does, right? So he got like his, NCOIC or whatever, to come over and talk to me. And he's like, yeah, I learned about this program and this and that and the other thing. And so these guys were not great, let's just say recruiters. They were probably used to filling filling billets for, maintenance people, truckers, and things like that, right?
Oh, well, this is post 9/11, so people are just flooding in,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah,
just
yeah,
signing them up. They're just signing them up one after
yeah,
another. They're not up on things that, and they've also gotten tasked to do this because they were probably recruiters before 9/11 when nothing's
yeah,
happening,
yeah, true.
and then all of a sudden the boom and the bust. So their world's all turned upside down as well. So now you walk in a kid off the street and you're like, I want to be a Green Beret, and they go, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, and so like, and to think about it now is like that's a good perspective, because at that point I didn't have any of that perspective to say like, yeah, these guys are probably inundated with, and they're probably just trying to fill 11 X-ray slots. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's yeah. So long story short, I left that recruiting station. I found another recruiting station in West Philadelphia. I actually called them, and I got on the phone with the NCOIC there as an E7. And I talked to him on the phone before I even went there. And he was like, hey, man, um, I think we can make this happen. Just come on down like tomorrow or whatever, and let's talk. And so I had a really good conversation with him, and I told him straight up, I was like, look, um, I wanted, I'm not asking you, I guess I was asking for special treatment. I basically told him like, look, I don't want to work with somebody who's going to fuck me over. I'm not interested in that. And he's like, I will handle you personally. And from then on, it was actually, the recruiting experience was phenomenal. He was the only person I talked to, super knowledgeable, very open. Really, I felt like he cared about me and my goals and my dreams. So I can't remember his name, but I can't say enough good things about him. Yeah, I wish I did. You know, I never did that. Like you go home after basic training kind of thing and like do that, you know, that
No.
thing. I never
Yeah.
did. I never did that. But, um, anyway, so he got me signed up. I, you know, obviously passed the ASVAB and all that, hit all the scores, hit all the PT stuff. And then, you know, then did the whole infantry, what OSIT, you know,
Did they tell
situation.
you the process of what was it going to be like? Like did they say this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, and then this, and then possibly this, or was it you're going to infantry basic and then you've just got to figure it out? Did they have any information for you? And if they did, is that how it ended up being, or was it completely off?
No, they did tell me up front. I actually, let me get back to that real quick because I skipped a kind of an important part. So through the process, the recruiter was like, listen, dude, he's like, you have a fucking college degree. He's like, I can get you in to OCS. You can take the officer route, and it will be your opportunities afterwards will be better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I listened and I went through that, and he's like, so I think at some point he called down to like SF recruiting, and they got a sergeant major on the phone, and he's like, hey, Sergeant Major so and so, again, can't remember the dude's name, wants to talk to you. I'm like, is this a big deal? Like, what is this? You know, he's like, oh, it's the Sergeant Major. So, you know, be respectful and all this shit. I'm like, okay, cool. So I get on phone with this guy. He, you know, basically went through, hey, why do you want to do this? You know, all that kind of, those kind of questions. And then he just said, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to tell you straight up. He's like, you can absolutely go the officer route if you want. He's like, but here's the deal. You will, you will go to OCS. You will get assigned a branch needs of the Army. It might be infantry. It might not. It might be combat arms. Might not. He's like, you're going to spend 3 to 4 years in the regular Army. Then you're going to have to go to selection, apply and get accepted to go to selection. And then if you're lucky, you'll get 3 years as a team leader. He's like, most guys get 2. Some guys get 4, right? And I've
Yeah.
got a story about that. But, and I was like, and then he's like, then you're a staff officer, you know, and then you go do your
Forever.
command stuff forever. And I'm like, oh. And he's like, or you can enlist. He's like, or you can enlist and you can basically live your entire Army career as, you know, as an operator. And I don't think he used that term. I'm using that term. And I was like, well, that sounds better to me. He's like, yeah, you should do that. Right. So obviously he's an NC, senior NCO. So that's what he wanted. But I
Obviously,
mean,
Sergeant
honestly, it's
Major's
what
going to
I
say
wanted.
that.
Yeah, it's what I wanted. Anyway, so back to your story. So yeah, they or your question. Yeah, they did tell me, you know, they kind of showed what the pipeline was like, and I think it was actually written down, but it wasn't exact, but it was like, hey, you're going to go to infantry OSIT training, you know, it's basic training, infantry school combined, then you're going to go to airborne, then you're going to report to brag, then you're going to go to selection, and they didn't go through the whole at the Q course phases, but then they said, you know,
Yeah.
then you go to selection, and if you get selected, you'll go into the Q course. And, you know, they told me, obviously, it's, you know, 18 months of training and this and that and the other thing, language school and all this stuff.
Did you
It
have to
didn't
do
bother
the
me.
preparatory course, like
Oh,
SOPS? Did
yeah.
they call
Well,
it
that's the
SOPSy?
part that they didn't tell me
They
about.
didn't tell. That's
They
what I'm
did
getting
not
to
tell me
here.
about that. Yeah.
Is because I know the early years of
It
SOPSy
was
were
fucking brutal, man.
brutal.
It
I
was brutal.
did they march you out in the lake until people quit and shit like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That shit's all true. So let me think back. So then, you know, then I get into the delayed entry program. And granted, so some time had passed. So by the time I signed up, I can't remember if I actually committed, you know, because you know, that process takes a little while, right? There was a lot of extra PT tests I had to do and things like that, and background checks and stuff like that. So it took a little bit longer to get through the process versus a regular, you know, 11 X-ray recruit or something like that. So by the time I actually went to METS and did, you know, the whole take the oath thing, I think it was April of 2003.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then I went to, uh, what's it? What's the IG down at Benning? 30th AG? 30th AG? 30th? Yeah,
30,
30th AG.
that
Yeah.
sounds correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 30th AG was September or October of 2003. So you know, the delayed entry program, I had to wait 6 or 8 months or whatever it was. Got down there, and there were about 5 or 6 other 18 X-rays in my platoon in
Okay.
basic training. Um, I don't know if there were other ones in our company, but there in mine there were 5 or 6, and there was one of the drill instructors actually had gone to selection, passed selection, got recycled in phase 2, SUT phase, which at that point was phase 2. I think it's changed several
Yeah.
times since then, but either way, he got recycled then, and then went back, had to go back. It was on the trail, and then so he kind of took us aside and kind of gave us a heads up about, hey, this is what this is all about, kind of deal from what he knew. And he kind of looked out for us too as much as he could. They're drill sergeants, so they're kind of dicks, right? So, but either
Yeah.
way, so he had told us that there was another group before us that had like a dozen 18 X-rays in it, another platoon or whatever before us, and so those guys were all in my SOPSI. So by the time I got through airborne school, got to brag, we're living in those semi-permanent barracks over there that are all torn down now, which is
They're all
sad
gone.
because they're all gone. Yeah, because anyway, so yeah, it was shitty, man. It was really kind of shitty. It was good shitty though. I mean, I'm not complaining about it, right? But it was rough. It was worse than selection, I can tell you that. Yeah, we rocked more in SOPSI than I think we did at selection. And we certainly PT'd a hell of a lot more in SOPSI than we did at selection, to the point where I didn't know this at the time, but from all of the rucking and the running, I had stress fractures when I went to selection.
Oh,
And
yeah. See,
shins and yeah.
it's a completely different path, right? Because especially the early years of 18 X-ray program, you get that wall or the gatekeepers that were in SOPC. Because when I went in the regular army, I got to my unit, I went to the brief, and I went to selection, and then I hurt myself, went right back and passed. But I didn't have any of that preparatory course, so I was to the course pretty easily comparatively to, and these guys, some of these guys have been in hold or in SOPSI for like a year getting tortured.
Yeah.
And just trying to get to where I was. I'm like, oh, I just went to selection and passed. Oh, that sounds terrible. People breaking their hips and arms and stuff. But yeah, I heard the early years, because that's the stories that would trickle down, because I went to the course in 13, I think, and they would still tell these tales of how horrible it was in the early years of SOPSI.
Yeah.
Just get beat on.
So it was winter. So by the time I got there, I think it would have been January of 2004 when I got there.
Which is always a nice time in Fayetteville.
Oh, beautiful. Well, yeah. Kind of got lucky. I mean, in the sense where like my rough phases of the Q course, like the only one I did in winter was Robin Sage, and it wasn't a terrible winter. I mean, it was still cold as fuck, but it wasn't like, snowing, and icing and raining every day. But either way, yeah, they had the gig pit, which I think they had gotten rid of. They had the gig pit out there, basically just this, I don't know, 20 by 20 sandbag pit that they put rubber down underneath, filled with water. And so when that iced over, it was, hey, let's have fun with these freaking candidates and have them break ice with their head and swim around in the icy water. That was fun. And then, like you said, the Crystal Lake out there in the northern training area, they'd march you down and make you stand there, see who would quit. That was fun.
That feeds in something I said in a earlier episode. I said nobody likes 18 X-rays, but 18 X-rays, and that really was kind of when you guys were starting the new program. There were no cadre that were 18 X-rays. They were all coming from the previous generation. And they just didn't like people, from what I've gathered from talking to people, is they didn't like guys coming off the street and wanting to do what they were doing at all.
Yeah, and when I got to SOPSI, I may get this number wrong. We had 3 NCOs, so 3 of the cadre came from Triple Nickel.
So
Zastro, Summers, and I cannot remember the other dude's name, but Zastro and Summers, Zastro was already there, and then I remember distinctly the day that Summers showed up. We had heard that this other this other dude from Triple Nickel. And obviously by that point, I was reading things and I was learning things about SF and all that kind of stuff. And so the first time I had ever seen an actual Green Beret was Will Summers. And we were out on the PT field doing log PT, which, is the best. And so we're out there doing log PT, and then I don't know if they did this on purpose, but it was like, you do all your iterations of log PT and then you kind of rest and you do it again, right? So during a rest period, here comes this guy, right?
Yeah.
And it's Will Summers, and he's reporting to SOPSI as a cadre, and he's got his beret on because everyone else was just wearing, patrol caps. So he's walking in with his fucking beret on, and I'm like, oh shit, dude, that's like a legit Green Beret. Yeah. Even though everyone here had an SF tab already and stuff like that, but it's the first time I actually saw a dude wearing a Green Beret, and it was a pivotal moment for me. And knowing that this dude had just, infiltrated Afghanistan and took over the fucking country, it was a pretty big deal, right? And so those guys wrote us especially hard.
I bet they did. And then so for anybody that's listening, my tens of listeners here, actually, I think I'm single digits, but Triple Nickel is 555. The teams used to be 3 digits. Now they're 4 because I was on 1330. So 555 would have been 5th Group, Bravo Company, or no, 2nd Battalion, Charlie Company, and then the 5th team. So that would have been the dive team.
Yeah, they were a dive team. And so, they were a dive team, and they let us know it.
And a
lot of flutter kicks.
Triple Nickel, along with 595, were 2 of the first units into Afghanistan. And then the horse soldiers were...
So 595 was the horse soldiers. They were up north.
Yeah, they were up
north. And Triple Nickel came... So 595 infiltrated first up north, I believe. And then Triple Nickel came shortly after. Within 2 weeks, they were in country. And they were the ones who met up with Karzai.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were the ones who met up with Karzai.
They met up with Dostum, right?
Dostum and exactly.
The Northern Alliance. But anyway, so you've got guys coming from, actual war now.
Well, not only that, but like could you just imagine like in the community, they're one of essentially maybe 24, let's just say, if they're even teams, and I don't think they were, but let's say they're one of 24 or 3 of 24 dudes that actually were the from an SF perspective, the tip of the spear into, OEF.
Yeah.
Their heads were like this, and rightfully so, not a judgment on them, but they in the SF community at that time, those guys were sort of like gods, especially for candidates.
Oh, I mean, everybody's that at Q course, because you're just a nothing when you're in the course. You're just I'm trying to pass today so I can get to tomorrow and then get to the next phase. So anybody that's got a Green Beret on, you have this tremendous amount of respect for, and then you get some backstory, and then they get to lore, and then the rumor mill starts spreading about people, and that's always fun to combat. So SOPSI, terrible.
Good, but terrible experience, but great. I mean, honestly, it prepared us. We had a higher than 100% pass rate, and that's only because we had one dude who got injured from a prior SOPSI, 1 or 2 dudes from prior SOPSI class that got injured in selection, came back and passed in our class. So we graduated with 104%. We tracked that shit too, because, like you said, like the regular Army guys, they fucking hated us, man. And they used to give us so much shit, but you know what? Like this isn't really about me. It's about the prep that they did, right? We just excelled at everything we did at selection because we had been training for, anywhere from, I think I was there 2 or 3 weeks. I wasn't there very long. The group that went to selection with me was there. That group that was at, those dozen or so dudes that were at basic before me, they were at SOPSI when I got there. And so we all went to selection together. It was a big group because, just the way class dates align. So, they were kind of pissed that we were only there 2 weeks because they had already been there for 3 or 4,
That's just
sucking it
sucking
up.
dick.
Yeah, just
Um,
sucking it up, man.
it was. I noticed there was when a selection because I got there. I was just coming from the regular army, but I'm a private, so I go over and talk to the 18 X-rays because most of them are specialists, and I'm just a
Hmm.
PFC.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm over there talking to him. It's like, well, what do you do? And the one guy's like, well, I was working for NASA and I just
Yeah.
didn't want to do it anymore. It's like, what do you mean working for NASA? He's like, I'm a rocket scientist. Like, are you like, like into
Yeah.
space? He goes, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you talk to the next guy, who's like, like you. Oh, I was a trader on Wall Street. Or, hey, what did you do? We had one guy there. He was a professional runner. Most impressive things I've ever seen anybody physically do. This guy could do at selection. But there was way more of a mashup of background in the 18 X-rays, guys that were just performing in their field, and then were like, I
Hmm.
don't want to do this anymore. I want to go be the best at this. And they all the guys that were top performers on the outside came in and just went right through the course. They just had whatever it was. Where I was
Yeah,
like,
it
oh,
was. It was a really interesting cast of characters because, like you said, there's some guys there was a guy that had in my class. I think I don't. He was an 18 X-ray, but I don't think I met him until the Charlie course. But he was had a PhD. You
yeah,
know, his dad was like a ambassador or some shit or some diplomat or something like that. So he grew up he grew up in I think it was England or something like that. He had an accent. Like, what's your deal? He's like, oh yeah, my dad was in the foreign service or was a diplomat or some shit. And, I don't remember all the details, but yeah, he had a PhD and everything. And, just impressive. We had a guy who was a D1 football player. Um, I think
yeah.
he was like 6'8", 260 pounds. That dude could rock though, man. He
Oh,
set the
just
pace. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you're not keeping
He
up
was
with that.
gone. Yeah. But yeah, it was an interesting cast of characters, man. But, um,
How
yeah,
was selection for you? Like, was it nothing compared to to SOPSI or what?
well, it was kind of a continuation, honestly. It was a continuation without the constant fuck games, right? Because like,
Mm,
SOPSI was a lot of fuck games, right? They tried to weed kids out, and rightfully so. Kind of like a Buds sort of situation, and I think they sort of emulated that. Not that obviously never been to Buds, and I can't speak too intelligently about it, but they had a bell. They had a bell, and every day's formation prior to they stand us up and get us in formation with our 100-pound rucks on, make us stand there for about 20 minutes until your shoulders fell asleep and your legs are numb, and okay, who wants to quit before we go? We're doing 80 miles today, or some whatever it
yeah.
was, and then it'd be like, who wants to quit? And inevitably somebody would until you got rid of all the weak, faint of heart, and then it pretty much stayed as it is. Um, Selection was, aside from the fact that I had those stress fractures, which caused like excruciating shin splints, which I had never experienced before in my life. Um, the long and the short run at selection were during was fine, but it was brutal afterwards. As the pain set in and stuff like that, and so. But you can't show it. You got to
No.
be tough guy, right? You can't show it. You can't show any weakness, and you just got to suck it up. And so that was tough. But other than that, they talk about the mental aspect of it, not knowing what you're going to do and everything like that. And for me, that didn't bother me too much because I was able to, like, when it was downtime, I was able to just read a book and just not be at selection, you know what I mean? And just mentally just be somewhere else and comfortable. And even if we're sleeping on army cots and cold or whatever, it wasn't that big of a deal. Um, but I can see why and I'm supposing this. I don't know this because I didn't experience it, but I could see why for dudes that were coming out of the regular army who were used to a very structured kind of,
Yeah.
hey, we have payday activities on this day and this and that and the other thing, and everything's real structured coming from those units. That might be a challenge for them because you're not getting feedback of how you're performing. You don't have your squad leader or your platoon sergeant to go talk to and say, hey, or not, they're not, directly telling you, hey, you fucked up on this battle drill and you need to fix yourself, kind of thing. So you're just kind of flapping a little bit out there. And, but for me, I didn't have a basis to judge, so it was okay. I felt like I was doing my best, and I felt like if I just continue to do my best, if they don't want me, then I'm
Yeah.
not right for it, you know?
Well, I guess it's interesting from your guys' perspective. You don't know what you don't know, so you don't know anything about the Army as it is. You just
Mhm.
know this little piece coming in, and that's
And what you
interesting
want. You
because
just
yeah,
know
you just
where you
know that
are and what you want.
what you
Hmm.
want. So I'm coming in from being a peon private in my field artillery unit, and it did seem like the X-rays at selection were very chill. It was just another activity to go do. Whereas the regular Army folks were more stressed out. They had more of that student stress that comes in later in
Mm.
the course, where they're hyper focused, and it got a lot of guys. You'd see guys fail the PT test, um, and then fail stupid stuff,
Yeah.
and uh, but I guess everybody gets weeded out differently. But you guys, I guess, were weeded out, yeah, much earlier.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It was, yeah, I mean, I actually enjoyed selection. The part of selection I liked the most was the star.
well, it's
You know,
great.
I just loved it, man. You're by yourself. It's do or die, right? If you're confident in your land nav skills, then it's not super challenging. I did
I
get four
struggled
points the first day.
at the start point. Always when I was at the start point, that's when I had, but as soon as I stepped off, I
Mhm.
was like, we're golden. But just sitting
Yeah.
right there, just going, all right. And probably this is a story here. Uh, don't watch the movie The Village before you go out to selection. Uh,
I don't think that movie was out when I went through, but I know what
it
movie you're talking about. Yeah.
so anytime I would hear something out there, I'd be like, oh, those fucking monster things are gonna get me. But then I'd step off. But there's no better feeling throughout it might be the whole course of when you sit down at your last point and they mark your thing and they're like, okay, just hang out over there. And
Mhm.
it's just peace. There's
Yeah.
no sound. There's nobody, there's no go to the next event. You know you're done. And you're
Yeah.
just, it's like Thanos at the end of Infinity War. You can
Right.
rest. But
Yeah.
I thought, yeah,
No, it
the
was
star was
great.
great.
I went through in April of 2004,
Okay.
so the weather was beautiful. I mean, it was great. Blue skies, dry, mild temperatures. It's silly to admit this, but I was singing Billy Joel songs, like his greatest hits, out loud the entire time, just by myself walking. And
You
I did
walk
get
by
my four.
the wrong cadre, he'll gig you for that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And so, I didn't really see many cadre when I was out there. If I that I can remember. I definitely stayed away from the roads, you know,
They
and
have, I've talked to some folks and they would have their little zones where they knew guys had to funnel through from the terrains.
yeah, it makes
And as
sense.
long as you listened to them in their brief and did what they say and followed their rules, you really weren't going to come in contact with them. But they stayed in their areas where they were going to hit guys. There were ways to
Yeah.
cheat where there nobody was, but they would stay where they would get the most action, and they knew where they'd be. So uh, they're out there, but they got to be where the higher traffic is. So
Yeah, it makes sense. Through SOPSI, they'd always tell us like, don't war game the exercises, don't overthink things, be the gray man and all that stuff. And I think I tried to do that, and I think it helped. Um, I
kill
do remember
teammates.
though, yeah, I got a story on that. But so we, yeah, after hitting that last point the first day, you hit the last point, and I think there was a horn. They had some, on their louds, their bullhorns or whatever. They would do something to signify end of time or whatever. And I remember I hadn't heard it yet, so I was like, "Hey, did I make it?" He's like, "Yeah, you're good. You made it by 45 minutes." I'm like, "Fuck yeah." He's like, "All right, go get in that truck over there, because there's the two trucks, like, whatever, the quitters and the whatever." And then for the next 2 days or 3 days or whatever it was, we were fucking living in poncho hooches, eating there was a pile of MRE boxes, and it was like, here's your chow, set up your hooch, put your flip flops on, and just chill. And it was like
Yeah.
beautiful weather, and it was mostly 18 X-rays at that point, because a lot of the and some of the guys that were coming out of like LURS units and stuff like that, who were pretty good land nav guys. But it was for the majority of the guys that passed that first day were 18 X-rays, or at least we established our own little enclave within the Hooch village, and it was great, man. We were just shooting shit, it was cool for that time. And then team week, yeah,
and then team week, and
yeah.
yeah.
The
So after
LRTM is what they called it when I went through. Did they call it the LRTM when you went through?
no, it was definitely team
It was
week,
team week.
and
So that may have
it was
changed a little bit from when I went through.
everything changed throughout. They would change the phases and
Yeah.
everything, but selection's generally the beginning, unless you're an X-ray. But you get there, but team week was something else, and that's where if you didn't know before, you would find out who the officers were, because everybody tried to keep it under wraps if they were an officer. Yep. But then in team week, they knew that they had to try and step up and lead, because the cadre were specifically looking at them. And but man, that was one good private ward running through there, and man, I did not put up with them having stupid ideas at all. Like, sir, that's not gonna fucking work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm trying to think now that we're talking about this, some names and stuff are popping back in, and we had so for us, I don't remember it being called team week. We had the LRTM, the long range team movement, but it was which was like a 2.5 day, I think 2.5 day exercise where they built all the team events into. So some were scenario based, where they would really put pressure on the officers to handle a lose-lose situation with a G chief kind of situation where somebody was going to get killed. And so his name was Captain Oliveira, if I remember correctly. Was I assume I never saw him ever again, so I don't know if he made it through selection or through the queue, but I think he was the captain on our team, because I think that the way that they set it up was they set it up so you had an officer or two, and a couple, at least one senior NCO, E6 or E7, and then everybody else was Joes, right? Mm-hmm. And so they tried to establish like a leadership chain of command within the small team, and you just had points, and you didn't know where you were going. So you had, you started, I think we started right outside, it was all obviously on McCall, but we started like kind of outside the selection area. And then you had to go to this point. And once you got to that point, there was a scenario, and it was really for the officers. Right. And so they would take the officer, and they would take one of us, and it would be this, KLE essentially, right? You're supposed to meet with this G chief and this and that and the other thing. And then there was this scenario where, negotiations went south, and next thing you know, they're gonna kill a member of your team if you don't do this or do something else. And I can't remember the details. And then, and then you would move somewhere else, and then you'd have to build one of the apparatuses, right? Whatever it was. I broke my foot actually on the first movement. I think first or second movement. So within several hours of LRTM, happening, I stepped on those big ass fucking pine cones in the sandhills. Yeah, I stepped on one of those bad boys, and I guess I had already had stress fractures in my foot, and I felt it pop, and I was like, "Oh shit, that ain't good." And it didn't hurt like super bad right away, but as I kept walking, it hurt really bad. And so, luckily, our small group leader was an 18 Delta, and he was a cool dude, which I thank him if I could right now for keeping me in the course, because I went up to him and I was like, "Hey, Sergeant, I think I broke my foot." He's like, "You what? You broke your foot?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay." So he's like, "Take your boot off." And he kind of took me aside when I said that. He took me aside away from the group, and he's like, "All right, sit down, take your boot off." And he felt my foot, and he like was messing around. He's like, "Oh yeah, I can feel your bones moving. Like it was like my second metatarsal, like just behind my, like to the left of my big toe. It was in my left foot." He's like, "Oh yeah, that's broken." He's like, "Hey, here's the deal. If you tell me one more time that your foot's broken, I have to take you out of the course. I will like, you can recycle, but I have to take you out of the course. He's like, I will provide you as much Motrin as you need, but you cannot mention this to me again. I said, roger that. And so every few hours he would show up with a little baggie of Ranger candy, like 3 or 4 800 milligram ibuprofen. And you're not eating during this time. So I'm popping 2 or 3 of these things at a time.
So good for you.
And it's so good. Yeah, that's probably why I have the issues I had, GI issues I have now. But it's and so I got through it, and it was sucked. And we had this Jordanian or Egyptian officer, because they send them through the course from time to time. We had one of those guys with us. I felt good about myself because I outpaced him with a broken foot on all of our movements, even though I was lagging behind. The team knew I had a broken foot, so they were not on me too bad about lagging behind. But I actually still carried the ruck because we only had, I think, one heavy ruck per team. See, if I remember correctly, it was weird.
I don't think we didn't have any of those scenarios. You got to a pile of stuff. You had to either make something out of it or make a plan to move it, and then you moved it. But
so we had that too. So maybe I'm conflating 2 different things. What I'm describing was the very last event, but we ended with carrying with getting the Jeep trailer right with 1 tire and the poles and the lashings. That was our last thing before selection, and I did all that with a.
That wasn't the worst event, but that was probably the second worst, was when you get to this. We got to the Jeep, old World War II Jeep, had 3 wheels on it. We had pipes, and it had a 55-gallon barrel cinched down in the back. And our objective was to move overland to 100 meters from the creek. And then we had to, so we pushed it and pulled it there, which was hard enough. And then we had to take 1-gallon buckets with wire handles. And then there was a line about that far, probably 2 inches from the top of the bucket. And we had to go down to the creek, fill the bucket up. And if the water dropped below that first line, we couldn't put it into the 55-gallon drum that we had to fill up.
So you had to go back and fill it back up.
So you have to dump that one out. And so that was pretty rough. But the worst event we had at selection was down pilot. That was just pain.
A lot of already things.
And in the cadre, he was getting mad at us because we figured we sat down and we said, we're going to do this. We're going to stop here. We're going to stop here. We're going to stop here. And he gave us the time standard, and he was harping on us. He's like, and I was like, Sergeant, you told us to follow the plan. And he kind of didn't have anything to say about that. He's like, damn, I did say that. And he kind of walked off. And but man, selection I thought it was fun. It was fun to do, and then it was fun to pass, and it was really fun to go back to my unit and kind of rub it in everybody's face that I did pass. Not the same for you, because you're right on to the next phase. So you go into the Q
SOPC 2. So SOPC 2. Yeah, so I got, so I mean, that the feeling of when you sit down and you're, counseling after, at the end of selection, you sit down with your cadre and they kind of read through your, I don't know if they did this for you kind of dramatically, but it seemed dramatic to me, right?
He tried to be dramatic, but he knew, he could tell by the look on my face. He knew that I had passed, and he kind of was like, this fucking guy. He reads the first sheet, and then he says, do I need to read any further? And I said, no, Sergeant. He gives me the sheet, and he says, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, he just said, we invite you to continue training or whatever he said, and he said, but everybody else was sitting in the picnic table area, and he was bringing us over one by one. He said, don't go back there. Get on that fucking cattle car right there.
Okay.
Remember did they still have them, like those? They're almost like a 5-ton with the soft top and like the kind of expanded steel sides, kind of like cattle carriers. You could fit like an entire platoon on the damn thing and all your rucks. And anyway, so he said, hop in that thing. We're driving you back to Bragg to go to Womack. So they did. They drove me back to Bragg to go to Womack, and the doctor x-rayed my foot, and he was like, holy shit, you fucking guys. He's like, I don't know why you guys do this to yourselves. The bone, like the bone fragments were like a halo around the break, and and the break had separated by like, whatever. He said this is, he's like, you'll be fine, but you guys are fucking nuts. I don't know why you do this to yourselves, because he knew I was coming from selection, and he knew that, I had continued walking on the foot. So I was cast up to my knee going into SOPC 2. So they brought me back out to McCall, right? So they cast me up, bring me back out to McCall. I'm fucking hobbling around on crutches with a big fucking smile on my face because I passed, right? I'm like, yeah, I got selected, bitches. And they're all like, Grimsgaard, what the fuck? I'm like, yeah, they're like, broke dick, this, that, the other thing. And go to SOPC 2. And SOPC 2 was essentially a prep for SUT, right? Because, that was
so
essentially
it was
the next phase.
They changed it for us, and it was called Intro to IUW, Intro to Unconventional Warfare.
Oh,
But I don't even really remember what we did. I just remember we were waiting, and then finally SUT came. Because we had to do combined leaders training too. Did you guys have to do that? Because you had to go to
PLDC and
PLDC and BNOC at the same. It was a combined one, and we had to do
ours
that.
was after phase 2. So technically that would have been phase 3 for us.
Yeah, they lumped everybody in together right before SUT and did that. But yeah, SOPC 2, I've never heard that before. It sounds terrible.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously you got a bunch of fucking dudes coming off the street that don't know shit about infantry tactics, and infantry school in and of itself is not going to prepare you, right,
No.
for somewhat, I would say, somewhat advanced. I mean, it's not really advanced, it's 7-8, but either way, we didn't know what the Ranger Handbook was. We didn't know what an op order was. You know what I mean? So like we had to learn all that shit. And so SOPC 2 was essentially a prep course for SUT. And so they brought us through like, Ranger Handbook, 7-8 and that kind of stuff theoretically. And then in practice, they ran us through ambush, raid, recon, multiple iterations out in the woods. But because my foot was broken, I wasn't allowed to, they would not allow me to spend a night out in the woods. So it kind of sucked, frankly. I fucking hated that because, and I told them, I was like, look, I'm fine. Just let me stay out here. I can hobble around through the woods. It's not a big deal. And they were like, no, the medic said, whoever said you're not allowed. So I was like, whatever. So we're living in those barracks, when we're not in the field. And dude, the fucking dudes hated me because my cast smelled so bad.
Because
it
you're
was
sweating.
so bad, sweating all day. It was so bad. And so they would bring me out there for like so for mission planning and all that. I would be part of that. And then, for the back brief, I would be part of that. And then I would basically sit and watch actions on. They would take me to, and I would sit and watch actions on it. I felt like a turd, because I wasn't actually doing it, but they didn't feel like, they knew that my foot would be healed by the time I went to SUT.
Yeah.
And I was either going to pass SUT or get recycled because I didn't know it enough. But luckily that didn't happen. Everything healed up, and I went to SUT and was able to make it through.
I will say this, sitting on the sideline, you do feel like a shitbag. But I learned from iterations in training where I had to sit and watch, I learned more about the whole picture of things.
Yeah.
Because when you're on the objective,
Yeah.
you're just focused on your little piece. But when you can sit and watch from an overhead view or something like that and see where, we should tuck it, we should here, this person needs to pull back here, and you learn more about control in the formation and things like that when you have to watch. So probably a better thing, if you're
I guess
injured,
that's a really good point.
At least you got to sit and learn. The cadre had that wherewithal, so that's good. I mean, there can be bad cadre that would have been like, no, leave him he can work staff duty every other day. And so that probably worked out in your favor as you got to do that. So that's good on them. But yeah, so you go back to the doctor saying, I don't know why you guys do this to yourselves. That's and you see that a lot in SF goes, just guys that their mind is tougher than their body, just tough men that will push themselves way too far and past the point of injury just to get something done. and it's good a lot of times when you're accomplishing something, but then other areas like mental health or
You sacrifice it all.
your sacrifice all of
You
it.
just sacrifice all of it. Like, fuck that.
Yeah.
It's about right now, right? How do I get this done? Yeah, it's not the healthiest, not the healthiest choice. I don't.
It's not the healthiest career field. It'll I
No,
told my one
it'll kill
friend,
you.
it'll take everything from you if you let it.
Mhm.
But all right, so we go through the course. What was there any point at the course where you thought you were going to fail, or would that really held you up? Because it sounds like it was pretty rough going through all of this. And how was MOS and Robin Sage for you?
Um, so I got 18 Charlie in the Q course. It was tough. I was never a great math guy. Like I can do percentages pretty well in my head, and money and stuff like that pretty well in my head. But like advanced calculations and stuff we had to do for all the demo shit, I
Advanced
struggled with that, man.
calculations, come on.
Well, for me, dude, I was like, I'm not, like I said, I wasn't a math guy, but like honestly, like algebra and stuff like that were not my strong suit in school, right? So maybe it was more of me psyching myself out, but I obviously passed it, but at the same time, there were guys in the course that were just rattling that shit off, and I'm like, why can't I do that? Why can't I do that in my head like these guys are doing it? So I struggled a little bit with that, but obviously went through my grades. My grades was a calc in place, right? My grades in calc in
Yeah.
place were not stellar.
Huh?
I had a few counselings for some poor performance in the grades. And it was a wake up call. I cannot remember the instructor's name. What I do remember though, we had Pappy was still there, and Ernie Tabata were still there when
Okay.
I went through. So that was cool. A couple of MACV SOG guys, as instructors telling stories and here and there. That was cool. Um, but yeah, I had a kind of a wake up call. Hey, dude, if you don't, basically, I think I got like a 50 on one of the tests, and
Oh,
it was one of the bigger ones, and the cadre was like, listen, if you don't get at least a 85 or 90 or whatever it was on everything from here on out, you're gonna recycle because of this. And I'm like, fuck, dude. And that was a wake up call. You get out of the field and you get back into classroom mindset. And of course, being a college graduate, my idea of classroom mindset is like put in minimum effort in class and maximum effort partying. So, I was basically, partying like a fucking college student every night and not studying at home and doing all that shit. And then, that was a wake up call. So I turned that around pretty quick and got through it and everything like that. But, the construction phase and everything like that was easy.
um, yeah, they give you a good block of instruction in the construction phase. Yeah, I I was class leader for the construction phase, so I feel like I didn't get a pass, but after the first phase was over, I kind of just hung out, did my tests, I did my mixtures, whatever I did, and then I never felt stressed really throughout, except for that 7 minutes my time fuse was burning. Uh, that was pretty stressful, and then when it popped, I was like, oh fuck, okay, well, on to Robin Sage.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I loved improvise though. When it came down to actually building your bombs and stuff like that, that part of it I loved and I was good at. Um, yeah, I didn't really like the math, but yeah, I got through that. And then Robin Sage, let me see, I had some sort of incident in Robin Sage that was in, I can't remember the details. I think, oh, I know what it was. So we had a PRC 137.
okay, the
Yeah,
radio.
the HF radio. Yeah. So
Hmm.
we had the PRC 137, and I had, like a fucking dumbass, I had stashed it. We had our little hooch, right? I had stashed it like in under some kit or something like that in the hooch, and we went out on some mission, And then I don't remember if it was like they were going to do a, like get accountability of shit, or if they were going to, or if we needed it for some reason that was not planned and I didn't have it. And I felt like such a fucking shitbag, and I let my team down. And it was that for me, it was like the moment where I'm like, fuck, I am never, ever, ever, if I make it through this, I'm never, ever going to let this happen again, because it was like the most humbling, disgraceful, shameful moment in, to date in the course. And, that was I think I was on the chopping block at that point, potentially for Robin
So
Sage, but,
you learn from it. Yeah,
yes,
those
exactly.
moments
Yeah.
happen.
Mm-hmm.
I did never had any. I got some negative peers once because an officer didn't know my name, which was really made me feel great. And cadre comes up to me, he's like, "Hey, this officer so and so is peering you negatively." I go, "Does he know my name?" He's like, "Oh, hold on." He goes to talk to him. He goes, "He thought you were somebody else." So, but yeah, you learn from uh, all of your mistakes, and then hopefully don't make them again. I had near misses in the course where I could have gotten dropped uh, for things like we were cleaning weapons one day, and in the that little spring inside the buffer extractor
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
that went
The
like
little
this.
with the little piece of rubber in it. Yeah. It did.
That
Yep.
went onto the rocks when we were cleaning weapons, and we had to, as a team, take each rock out one by one and try and find it. Well,
Did you
the
find it?
cadre, we found it as I was going to tell the cadre that we couldn't find it. They found it as I was walking over there. So I would have gotten probably dropped for that. And then, so my team bailed me out of that one. And I was like, okay, from now on, we're not cleaning weapons outside anymore.
Yeah.
And then in Robin Sage, one of my G's decided in the middle of the night to run from his outpost out on the road into camp with a weapon. So it's full moon. All I can see is a silhouette of a guy with a gun running into camp. And we got blanks. So I shoulder up and I start screaming at this dude. And I'm like, and I'm weighing my options. Is this the G and he's just not listening to me? Or is this somebody coming into the camp? And I put it down, and he runs up and I see it's a G. I was like, man, you almost got me dropped from the fucking course, you piece of shit. Because I was gonna open up on the dude. I thought we were being overrun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those are two moments in the course where if it went the other way, maybe I wouldn't be sitting here today or something like that. Because you never know, right? You never know going through the course when it's going to be your last day. But no, we graduated, got our beret, and listened to some speech that we didn't want to hear, and now here we are. But so how was it? How was it finally being done, graduating, and getting your beret, and then realizing you're back to private once you get to your next unit?
Yeah, yeah, it was well, the first few days after Robin Sage were shitty because I had contracted some sort of parasite, and I was literally shitting my brains out for almost a week, and it had to go to the doctor and all that kind of
Oh,
shit. So that was
from Sage, from
and
something you ate?
yeah, and I had
Because
lost
Sage
like,
was so sanitary, though. I mean, it was
oh,
such
it
a
was, yeah,
it was,
chicken soup out of a fucking rusty fucking pot. Yeah. It yeah, I had lost. I think I had lost. I think I lost more weight in Robin Sage than I lost in Sear. Um,
really.
yeah. So I know the Q course has changed. So when I went through, you graduated Robin Sage, um, and I can't remember if we had the donning of the Green Beret ceremony before or after we kind of got our thought. They gave us our languages, which pretty much dictated your group, right? So I wanted 10th group, third group, or fifth group. That was my top three when you put your top three down. And I found out I got
Okay.
Spanish. So I'm like, okay, well, yeah, it makes sense. Send the fucking 6'4" blue-eyed fucking dude down to South America. But hey, let's do it. Yeah, I mean, it was honestly, it was the best feeling of my life. You're standing on the parade field, you don the Green Beret, the guys wailing on the bagpipes is all fucked up. But yeah, I mean, my family came down. It was a big thing. My grandfather, who was in the Navy, who, told me you're going to go special forces. What the hell do you think you're going to do with your life? What do you want to be, a CIA assassin or some shit? This is dumb. This is stupid. You won't do anything with your life.
Maybe.
He's a yeah, maybe. I mean, honestly, that's kind of what I wanted to do. But he was kind of a dick anyway. I never really liked him much, but he was there. He was super proud and everything. So it was good. That was nice. And then of course language school. The way we did it, right, was you went to Robin Sage, and then we got our berets. Then I think we went to SEER school and then language school, or maybe
Oh,
vice versa. Yeah, it was different because they're always trying to optimize the Q course. Yeah,
there's no optimizing. They just move it around. So we didn't get shit.
yeah, I think it was language and then
Sage.
SEER actually.
Oh no. So we went selection, IUW, SUT, SEER, which was fun back to back, and then Robin Sage, and then language. So and we didn't get our berets until
After
the
language.
end of language. You didn't get your beret or tab, so you were kind of skating on thin ice to get past. All they got to do is score a 1-1. But yeah, but okay. So what? So we get all done with that. We get all done with that. It's time to be
All done with
a
that. Yeah,
Green Beret. What was your
yeah.
first impressions getting to group? Because now you're graduating in 2005.
It was 2005. Yeah, it
Okay.
was October of 2005 when I reported to the group.
And
You
so
had
you
to do your
just
whole interpost
yeah, you just
PCS,
went
which was
across the
fun.
street, right?
Yeah, but you had to PCS out of SWIC and you had to go through
Yeah.
all the shit. Then you had to sign back in and then redo it all again. It was kind of interpost transfer or whatever they called it. Went through that and then so I was in Second Battalion, Seventh Group, right? So my buddy of mine who I became pretty tight friends with got Seventh Group as well, and so he got his report date was like a day or two before mine, and so I was like, "Hey, dude, do you mind if I tag along with you? You know, just to
Yeah.
see what this is going to be like?" He's
Was he
like,
regular Army or an X-ray?
no, he's another 18 X-ray."
Okay.
He's like, "Yeah, sure, like let's go." So he actually got First Battalion, so he goes to First Battalion, and I'm sitting with him, and in the battalion CSM's office, right? I don't remember I don't remember who it was, but anyway, I'm sitting there, and he goes, "Oh, his name was Nick Brown, good fucking dude." He goes, "Okay, which one of you knuckleheads is Nick Brown?" And he raises his hand, me sergeant major, and he goes, "Who the fuck are you?" I go, "Oh, my name's my name's Specialist Grimsgaard, Sergeant Major. Nick's my buddy, and I'm just along for the ride here." He's like, "Well, you're not on my fucking gains roster, so what the fuck are you doing here?" Kind of thing. And then I was like, "Well, I told him I'm just really excited to get to group, and I just wanted to see what this was going to be like." And he was like, "All right, we'll sit down and fucking listen." So he kind of gave Nick his whole thing. I think Nick went to Bravo Company, if Alpha or Bravo Company, and then 2 days later, I reported to my CSM, and they sent me down to Alpha Company, Second Battalion, and the whole entire company was gone. So it was basically an empty building, except for the rear det sergeant major, right, was a team sergeant from 745, the dive team, Kiwaha, John Kiwaha.
Okay.
And he's sitting there, and of course this is BDU era, right? This is pre
Oh
ACU.
yeah.
So I had my back in the BDU era, you would get your winter grade BDUs and you would press them because they were your nice ones. So I'm wearing spit shine boots. I'm like, fucking let's go, right? Get in there, and he's like, "Hey, I got you here." He's like, "Hey, the entire company's at Fort Bliss doing PMT for Afghanistan." He's like, we're going to send you down to meet your team. I think he's like, "I don't know what team you're going to, but I think you're going to go to 746. Sergeant Major's down there. Major Nance was the company commander. He's they're all down there. He's like, we'll go up to the S1 and they'll square you away with plane tickets and all this shit, right?" So This is my first, TDY experience, and it was like day one of being in group, right? I think it was like the day or two later I left. They had to give me all my kit. So, um, get all my shit and get the plane ticket, fly down to El Paso, and I'm standing at the carriage, baggage carriage, pulling my freaking duffel bags off the shit, and then some two random dudes in civvies walk up and they say, "Hey, you look like somebody who's doesn't." You look like somebody. What did they say to me? You look like somebody who's here to meet somebody that they don't know. And I'm like, yes. And they're like, "Hey, I'm Sergeant Major. What was his name? Whatever." He's like, "I'm sorry," and it was like I think it was the warrant or something like that where it was there. The two of them were there. So like, all right, get your shit, and they helped me with my bags. Got in the car. They had like a rental car. We drove out to Fort Bliss, and they were fucking with me pretty hard in the car. I'm sitting in the back. I'm trying to just be fucking quiet, not say a fucking word, answer, speak when spoken to, kind of thing. And I'm just sitting there, and they were like, they were kind of like fucking with me by telling stories about fucking with people. You know what I mean? So it's like getting in my head. I'm like, oh shit, these guys are gonna fucking kill me. You know? So we get back to whatever like little barracks or whatever they were staying in for PMT, and they walked me over, introduced me to my team sergeant and my team leader, and it was ODA 746, which was then 7216, and what at that point was 746, but became 7216. Um, and so they they basically just dropped me off, and that was it. And then it was a brand new team that had just got stood up like 2 weeks ago because they had just stood up the sixth team in each company.
Oh, really?
So this is before Fourth Battalion and all that shit, right? The
Yeah,
Fourth
Fourth
Battalion
Battalion
wasn't
was
even a
in.
concept.
Yeah, later.
2008 or 7 or 8 or something like that. I don't
Yeah.
remember exactly, but um, and we were doing PMT for Afghanistan. So, another wake up call, like, oh shit, like we're supposed to leave for Afghanistan, and I'll get to where that leads. But we were supposed to go to Afghanistan, within whatever it was, 30 days, 45 days, whatever it was. So introduced me to the team, and they're trying to get a handle on all the gear, right? All the nods, all the weapons, because it was a
Which
brand new
where,
team.
where the Charlie comes in.
Right. And so they were like, "Oh, you're an 18 Charlie," and they had two 18 Bravos trying to do accountability. And they're literally going with a notebook and they're writing down serial numbers of everything, radios, every fucking thing, right? And I'm like, guys,
Where's the property book? Where's
yeah. Well, there wasn't one. I mean, we had the printout, you know what I mean?
yeah.
The printout that they give you, right? But we have to do the accountability. And the team leader sitting there on his CF-18, I don't know what the fuck he was doing, sit rep or something. And I'm like, "Hey, we should be doing this in Excel." And the Bravos look at me and they're like, "You know how to use Excel?" I'm like, "Yeah, I
Just
do."
a classic Bravo
In
line,
fact,
right?
yeah, I was like, in fact, I used to build massive spreadsheets for the bank that I worked for right out of college and intern for. And they're like, "Fucking A, dude, here." And that was it. And then from that moment on, it was kind of like, I felt like it was the little thing that I could do to show value, like immediately,
Well,
quickly.
nobody wants to do
And
an inventory. Like
nobody wants to do that
they're the
shit. Yeah.
worst. So I found that every time I did an inventory, nobody fucks with you. I got so good at them. The last one, my commander just looks at it and goes, "Is it all there?" Yeah. Okay. And he leaves. That was it.
Yep.
So if you could, as a Charlie, if you could do a solid inventory and you didn't lose anything, you're good to go. They don't fuck with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the
So I
classic
so
Bravo answer.
yeah, so I did that and I worked on that for uh, I can't remember. I mean, my memory is so fucked up. But I want to say I basically worked. If we weren't out in the field, I was doing that, and it was like all night long. Like I wasn't sleeping and shit like that, which was fine. It's what I needed to do, right? So
Yeah.
we got that squared away, and from that, I think from that moment, my team leader, who I'm actually still friends with, and I'm actually his youngest child's godfather. My wife and I are the godparents.
Well,
Really great fucking dude. From that moment on, I think he was like, all right, like I gotta use this guy for shit, or at least I can trust him. I can rely on this guy. And so we did our whatever week or so it was there. Funny story. So it was the entire company, right? So I hadn't met anybody else in the company. I'm the new guy. I'm the FNG. Dudes are fucking with me when they can for fun, and I expected it. We got done with, I think it was our first day of training. So I don't know if you've ever been to Fort Bliss, but
I
there's
have.
there's tank tables out there, right? So we were
Yeah.
doing GMV mobility training on the tank tables and stuff like that. So we're out there for the first day, and obviously, it's warm during the day, it's cold at night. So we took all the doors off of all the trucks, and we had stacked them up against some berm somewhere where we were kind of like our assembly area or whatever. And so we did our whole training for the day. We come back, it's nighttime, whatever time it was at night. We start pulling the doors to put them back on the trucks to drive back to our hooches. And one of the dudes pulls the last door away, and there's a fucking rattlesnake coiled up underneath the door. Because at night they go under the
Yep.
doors that are still warm, right? So he pulls that over. He freaks out like a bitch, like a girl, man. And I'm not judging the dude. And I don't even remember the dude's name or exactly who it was, but he was like, fucking rattlesnake. Like, oh shit. Everyone's like, oh my God, like freaking out. I'm like, give me a fucking e-tool. I swear to God. This isn't like and I went out and I fucking cut the fucking thing's head off with an e-tool. And at that moment, everyone was like, who is this fucking guy? Where is he coming from? And
I
then,
think
then
he's a
they gave me the
stockbroker from New
yeah,
York.
and then they gave me the name Grim Reaper, which turned into another nickname later. But so I was like, okay, cool. I have now solidified myself as someone who can kill a rattlesnake to my company. And the company commander was like, dude, that was fucking cool. And we skinned the snake. We had plans to eat it. We threw it in our team cooler that we had taken out. It was all wrapped up in plastic, and then we had taken the skin and my company commander, and I didn't grow up as a hunter and any of that shit. I grew up in Jersey and kind of like
Yeah.
very kind of urban, suburban area. So he's like, hey, he's a country boy. He's like, hey man, we're get the cardboard from an MRE box. So we go and get the cardboard, the thing that comes out. We get that. He lays that fucking thing down. He's like, perfect. He folds it up. He takes it back to wherever they had their little op center or whatever, and he felts that fucking thing down, and he pinned it down with all the little pins, you put in like the fucking
Yeah.
the words or whatever, and he brings it back to me like right before we're gonna leave, and it's in like a shopping bag folded up. And he's like, "Here you go, man." He's like, "You guys take care of this, and we're gonna hang that up in the company underneath the door." And as like a 2025 PMT or whatever for OEF 9 or 8 or whatever it was. And so I'm like, cool. I got some street cred now with the company. I've got some street cred with the company commander. Things are good, going well. We pack up, our team only packs up, and we, rider vans and shit. And we drive from there to the Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center up in Northern California, Bridgeport, California. So up in the Sierra Nevadas. Cause my team leader had the foresight to say, hey, I want to do high altitude mule packing training.
Smart.
Yeah, it was real smart. And so we drove all the way up there, which was brutal. It was like a 22-hour drive. It was fucking long. And we went straight through, took shifts driving. And I was driving this fucking U-Haul. It was like me and the other Charlie on the team, who was my senior Charlie, who was also an E5. And we're driving this fucking U-Haul that sucked. Like it couldn't make it up the mountains. I thought this thing was going to fucking just go backwards down the mountain, dude. And we finally get there. I was the last one to drive, so they let the last shift the drivers sleep in the next day, and the other guys had to get up, and so they tasked them with taking the rental cars, like the not the trucks, but the actual rental cars that we had, to return them because our exfil plan was different than how we got there, and so as they were doing that, they collected all the trash out of all the cars and they threw it in the dumpster, and they threw that fucking snakeskin in the dumpster by mistake. I was so upset.
Uh,
I was so mad. I was ready to go dumpster diving for that fucking thing, and I should have.
you
But
should have, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the details around why I didn't. But so then we did that mule packing course, which was pretty cool up there in Sierra Nevadas. That was a beautiful place, man. Marine Corps, that is like that's probably like the nicest fucking place in the entire Marine Corps as far as bases go. It was beautiful.
Haven't
And
been to
then,
that one, but I'm sure it is. Yeah.
yeah, it was cool. And then we left there. We went to, uh, not Fallon, Nevada, Hawthorne, Nevada. And we did some additional, you know, high altitude training where it was just us and we planned missions and did stuff. And then my team leader planned this whole escape and evasion thing that turned into a like 2 day fucking climb to a 13,000 foot peak, which half the team didn't even make it to the top of. And but it was fun. We had somewhere there's pictures of us in front of the sign up there, and it was brutal. And then we came back, and then they shut the fucking deployment off. So
Oh,
I learned quickly that when they mobilize a National Guard unit,
yeah. Yeah.
turning that off is very difficult,
Oh, yeah.
apparently. So they had mobilized either 19th or 20th group, I can't remember who it was, and they were going to send the entire battalion, 2nd Battalion to Afghanistan, or 2nd and 3rd Battalion to Afghanistan. And so they ended up having to shut down basically 2nd Battalion. So 3rd Battalion won the coin flip, and they ended up going on that trip. And they took Charlie Company from 2nd Battalion to attach to 3rd Battalion, and which probably sucked for them because they were like the redheaded stepchildren and they got the shittiest fucking missions, to 3rd Battalion. And so we stayed back, and Bravo Company stayed back, and it kind of sucked. But this is a great story. It gave me the opportunity. So Easy Elizares got killed in Afghanistan from 3rd Battalion guy, and I didn't know him, but he was well liked amongst everyone in 3rd Battalion, and I was chosen. Our company was chosen, where they took a couple teams to be part of the funeral service for that. So I was a pallbearer for him, and that was an experience where I was like, oh shit, this is real.
Yeah.
Sitting in the front of that church and hearing his children. He had like 4 kids, young kids, and his wife just sobbing, crying. That was real. Like, it set in pretty quick that like dudes are fucking dying here, and so we did that, and came back, and eventually then we did a Columbia rotation,
So
2006.
JSAT.
Yeah, it was actually not a JSAT. It was a CNT, counter narco terrorism mission. So we had that counter narco under playing Columbia. So that was all right. We were in Palomido, which is like the Fort Benning of Colombia. There, training the unit called the Bacoa. Taking the dudes to the range, shooting range POIs, demo POIs, and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's there's so many different things. Like, so you get to your team at the height of war, right? And then so National Guard, yeah, it is. Once you start that process up, it's much easier to turn the active duty guys off, and just because they're already owned by the government. They're just,
Right.
oh, we'll just have them do something else, have them go cut the grass or whatever. But once you mobilize those National Guard civilians up to be active again, it's a big process. So yeah, they'll always take precedent over the Title 10 guys.
It's funny you say cut the grass, because I think we did a lot of that, actually. We did have
Yeah.
to do area beautification, red cycle
You've
detail
seen
shit.
the long range training calendar, right?
Mhm.
And so when you pull a team out and you've got them slated for this, well, everybody else fills in everything else in their place. So now they're turned off. Well, we don't have anything for them to do. Oh, well, fuck. I mean, we got any buildings that need painting or shit like that?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's nothing on there, and there's all the ranges are taken up. There's nothing for them to do. So you can't do anything. So yeah, that's
Man in a weed whacker. Yeah.
yeah, go. Yeah. So, but
I may have skipped a part. So I can't remember. Try to think. At in some point they reclassed me to an 18 Echo. So
while you're in group,
yes.
or
So yeah. So when we got to when the time that I was coming into group, they, because of the 18 X-ray program, and because they were heavy recruiting. They were pulling more dudes in and expanding. They ended up being overstaffed on 18 Bravos and 18 Charlies because I think that SWIC was purposely selecting more 18 Bravos and Charlies than they were Deltas and Echoes because they knew it had a higher pass rate, right? So they wanted to get guys out to groups. But we ended up being like 120% on Bravos and Charlies. So my team sergeant, I guess, came out of a meeting with the sergeant major, and everybody had to nominate someone to go back. Or I don't know how that conversation went. I wasn't in it, but he comes up to me and goes, "Hey, um, what do you think about operating radios?" And I was like, what are you talking about? His name's Ray. I was like, Ray, what are you talking about? He's like, I have confidence that you could pass the 18 Echo course. I go, are you asking me or are you telling me?
I'm telling
He's
you
like,
100%.
he's like, you have been voluntold to go to the 18 Echo course. I'm like, God damn it, dude, fuck that. And so, so I went back to the 18 Echo course, or went back to, SWIC to do the 18 Echo course. And lo and behold, my buddy Nick Brown's in there with me. So I show up the first day. There's Nick. I'm like, hey, what's up, motherfucker? I was like, oh, this is great. And there's like five or six of us in there. And at that point, the 18 Echo course, they had just moved from when they used to do the max gain. I don't know if you had ever heard of that. They had already taken Morse code out, right? And they had taken max gain out, and they did basically recreated max gain at Fort Bragg to make it a sort of a condensed course. And so I went through, and the 18 Echo course, I don't know if it was like this when you went in, but when I was going through the Q course, it was always like they're going to PT the fuck out of you at the 18 Echo course. You got to carry the radios. You got to be the strongest fucking dudes.
I mean, right? The guys, when they got done with the Echo course, they were happy that we only had 130-pound rucks at Sage because they had 150-pound rucks at max gain.
Yeah. Yep. So we went through, so we had, and these are names I will say, and not in a good light. We had the NCOIC was a dude by the name of, I think it was Greg Olson. He was a third group dive guy. And we had a guy by the name of Belushi was his last name. I want to say Scott, but I can't remember his first name. Okay. So we're going, the first week or so of the course we really hadn't gotten into much. It was just classroom theory shit, wave theory and all that stuff. But the PT sessions, it was like almost like they were recreating SOPSI. They were trying to weed dudes out during PT so bad that it got annoying, for us that were already tabbed. And so we, it was like after the first week or 2 weeks or whatever, we would always go over to like the COSCOM area of post because this was way out and like off MacArthur Road where the training area was. And they had since moved it, but we would come back to COSCOM to basically shower and eat breakfast and then go back for a classroom. And so we're eating breakfast and we're just sitting there. It was like, this is bullshit. Like we're already tabbed. We all got like what they're trying to do here with these candidates who are still going through the pipeline, but we felt like we didn't really fit that model. So we didn't, it was weird. So they nominated me and I don't know if I volunteered for this or they were just like, yeah, you do it. So I go up to Sergeant Olson. I go up there, 100% respectful. I actually stood at parade rest and I'm like, hey, Sergeant, me and these guys, we're already tabbed. I totally respect what you're doing here as far as trying to weed, these guys out in PT and stuff like that. But, do you think, we could have a separate PT session from that? Because, we're not here to get hurt. We're not here to impact our careers. We're here to learn, right? No issues with doing PT, but we're here to get better and go back to our teams.
And that probably went over very poorly.
Oh, yeah, it did not go over well. He's like, what the fuck? He's like, this is my fucking course and I will run this course. I was like, Roger that. Roger that. We went back and then, we had obviously passed it and all that kind of shit. But to this day, that guy was, that probably brought more heat on us, obviously, than if we had just kept our mouth shut. I say mine. I would have kept my mouth shut. But if you remember, probably the first thing they told you when you get the selection is like your reputation starts here and it's going to follow you everywhere you go. It works that works both ways, right? That works for the cadre and that works for the candidate. Oh yeah. So I ran into that dude in Afghanistan ripping out. So third group was ripping us out in 2007. And I was at Bagram. I was like the last guy to go home with all the gear. And I'm sitting there in like the sea hut brushing my teeth at Camp Vance. And he walks in. He's like, "Hey, what's up, dude?" I looked at him. And at this point, I'm like, I've already been through a combat deployment. I didn't give a fuck about this dude. You know what I mean? I didn't give a fuck. Like, I'd put on probably 30 pounds of muscle. And he was a little dude, he was a little guy. And I was just like, fuck you, bro. Fuck you. You remember fucking blah, blah, blah? And you try to pull all that shit. He's like, whoa, why are you so pissed off? I was like, fuck you, bro. And I just left. So, like, it was just kind of one of those things. And whatever. I had no animosity towards him today, but it was dumb playing fuck games with us.
Heightened.
Yeah, for sure.
And then SF dudes, especially on a team and especially in that environment, have an attitude. And it's like,
Oh, yeah.
I don't care. I'm just going to tell you how I feel.
100%.
And I don't care. And maybe we'll sort it out later, but whatever. So let's, a little about me.
Yeah.
I got to, so just so you know, leading into the next thing here, I graduated in 14, got to my team after block leave in 15. And on this training exercise right here, which was my first one, 2 months after getting to my team, I got 3 concussions in in about a day. And that was it. That was all my team time. So
oh, fuck.
I went to the B team after that, and then I went to another B team back to Korea. So I spent a year and a half in Korea. I support. Then I went to battalion, and then I got medically retired in 2018. So I didn't get to do any of the stuff that I trained for or anything like that. I never went to combat. I didn't get to do anything that the SF guys should have got to do. Anything we trained for, I didn't get to do. But I was really upset about it for a really long time, and I've really gotten over it now. So I can do this. Like I can start my own thing, because I'll listen to podcasts and I'll be like, oh, I wish I had that. So I'm doing this. I'm trying to create something out of nothing, and I'm an ambassador for the Green Beret Foundation. I've really gotten over it. But it's also something I will never get over. So I'm interested. You're my first guest that I've actually ever sat down with, because after I got hurt and we went to Korea, the guys would sit around telling their war stories, right? And I would have to leave because I knew I was like upset with myself that I knew I was never going to be able to go do that. Even though I was still in and I was getting healthier and whatever, I knew it was over, because I was like, this is never going away. And that's from high school sports, from getting hit in the head, from not taking care of a fucking compressor falling through a ceiling, all kinds of shit. I've had over 10 major blows to my head, and it's just never, I was like, that's it. So anyway, you as my first guest is interesting. So as long as you're okay, I'd love to talk about what you think about, so that you joined in the height of war, right? And you got to deploy and go to combat. What was that? Because you said earlier, you're like, oh, all this shit's real. And it was, right? When we go to the range, we're training to kill people. You're training to kill people there and to save everybody else. That's a real training. And those events they made us do in selection and things, that's real stressful situations that you're putting yourself in. So how do you think it all wraps up when you finally do go into a scenario where it is life or death? And do you think that prepares you well for when the time finally comes to where you're going to have to play chess?
Yeah, I mean, let me think. Let me think on that. So absolutely, the dealing with the stress and being able to kind of, I'll actually go back further than the Q course, right? So the first time I jumped out of an airplane, right? So you're sitting there in your chalk, right? And I had my little battle buddy from airborne school, was this little, I call him a kid because he was little. Like, I'm 6'4", right? So he was up to like, here on me, and he was like 19 years old, right? This little black kid from Alabama, and we're sitting it was the funniest fucking kid, man. I love this little guy, and he's right behind me. I'm number one in the stick, and I look behind him like, hey man, you ready? You good? He's like, yeah. He's like, I gotta tell you something. I'm like, what do you gotta tell me? He's like, I ain't never been on an airplane before. I'm like, oh shit, dude. I started laughing at him. I was like, oh God. I'm like, bro, you never been on an airplane? I was like, how did you get to the basic training? He's like, man, I drove a bus. And I'm like, oh shit. And so I'm like, okay, well, this is pretty fucked up, man. The first time you're on an airplane, you got to jump out of one. He's like, yeah. I was like, are you good? He's like, yeah. I was like, don't worry, dude. Just follow me. You're good, man. And I remember mentally thinking to myself, like, first of all, you can't be a jump refusal, right? So
No.
obviously, so there's a stress. There's stress there. And I've got this kid behind me who's never been on an airplane before. So I better show him how to fucking do this so he has enough confidence in himself to do it behind me, right? Because now he's my battle buddy, right? And I'm like, fuck. So I remember standing there and, we're doing, we're doing, going through, not pre jump, but, actions on, right? And, it came to the point, I just made this realization that, like, well, Eric, I was like, this is the decision you made. You're either going to live or you're going to die. But at no point are you not going to jump out of this fucking airplane. Right. And I was like, and at that point, I kind of surrendered my mortality, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. And I was just like, this is the moment. And so because I think I did that then, I was able to kind of carry that through for other things. Now the stress levels increased as you went through the Q course and did all these other things. So, but that was kind of the foundational point at which I was like, I am surrendering my mortality to my patriotism to the country and all these things. And I, at this point, just saw myself as like, I'm a vessel to do the deeds that we need to do to these, you know, to
Yeah.
these bad guys. Right.
It's interesting you say
So
that though, because I remember at a certain point, I don't think there was a point, but I think I realized at one point in my career that I just wasn't afraid of anything anymore.
mhm,
Like we did some spies training where we're hanging up under
mhm,
the helicopter and we're
yep.
just going around. And you're just like, oh, okay, cool. You jump out of an aircraft and you're just like, oh, I hope the chute opens. Okay, there it is. I just wasn't afraid of anything. And that came back the day I got hurt on the ocean. That's what yeah. And because that was all fucked. That day was so fucked up. It was such a bad day. But like, it was in the moment, I thought I was going to drown. I thought I was going to die. But all of the everything else, because I was right there. I mean, I was like terrible in the water. I shouldn't have been on a dive team. Got hurt and all this, and I was like, I think I'm gonna die. And that's the only moment I was like, all right, this is kind of fucked up. But everything else, other than that, it was like, okay, yeah, we're just doing this. So that's interesting. You
Yeah.
say that. We'll
Yeah.
just do it because it's our job.
Yeah. And then, I mean, you know, the training in the Q course was, basic level training. Like in combat, having the foundational knowledge of ambush raid recon, right? Having the knowledge of, op order, how to execute a mission and things like that. It's absolutely foundational knowledge, but we didn't do a lot of 7-8 shit when we were in Afghanistan. It was very different, right? So the training that we did at group as a team or as a company that prepared us, and I'm not here to sing the praises of PMT freaking POIs and everything, because the formal battalion level PMT that we did prior to OEF 10 and '07 was okay at best. Like, it wasn't great. But what we did as a team and the training that our team leader, what he planned for us, because we did a separate team only PMT. We went with one other team from the company down to NTC, and him and the team leader from 741, they devised a whole nother training plan with the OCs
Mm-hmm.
at down at NTC that was way more realistic and way more relevant to what we actually did in Afghanistan. So I think I see it as stepping blocks, right? So, like, I I don't think I could have been effective in Afghanistan coming right out of the Q course and going directly to Afghanistan. I would have been just learning on the fly versus having operated, outside of the enemy threat, but having operated it as a team and done the mobility stuff that we ended up doing in Afghanistan. having done that before in NTC and PMT and stuff like that was definitely crucial to being able to be an effective member of the team. So we were up in so this is 2007, March of 2007. We ripped out with their group. I
Ripped out
can't remember it. Yeah.
for people
So
listening.
yeah,
Ripped out is relief in place. So when one unit takes over for
yeah.
another one.
Yep. So we ripped out. I think it was ODA 335. But I might be wrong. It was a dive team. I know that they made that clear to us that they were a dive team. You know, all dive teams do that. So
I fuck it. I hate.
Hey, look, I'm not shitting on a dive team. I had a slot for scuba school because we were rated as a Marops team, and I was excited as hell. But they stripped it. They took it away. But I would have loved to be in a dive team. I swam. You know, I was a pretty highly competitive swimmer coming in. You know, before that. But I would have loved
all
it.
the time. I swim all the time. I'm fittest I've ever been right now. I can go swim 2 miles in the pool, whatever. And I just messaged my buddy. I was like, I'm a beast. I still can't pass dive school. Fuck, like I still
dive school.
I
don't know. I've never gone, but it's a bitch. Yeah.
My buddy went. He gets back and he's like, nope, never again.
Closest I got to dive school was on vacation in Key West like 3 or 4 years ago when we chartered a little boat to take us out and do fishing and snorkeling and stuff like that. And as we were coming back, I was like, oh shit, it's fucking Swick Dive School. And my friends and family are like, what the fuck is that? I'm like, it's SF Dive School.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So we're 3 4 weeks of your life or whatever it is. So yeah, we rip out with those guys in Kunar province up in Fob Naray. So that's northeastern RC East, like
you're in the mountains.
Yeah, up in the mountains, exactly. Yeah. And 2007 was kind of a fucked up time in Afghanistan. The ROE was very restrictive. I mean, I think it always is. We all complain about that, right? We always complain about the ROE being restrictive and stuff like that. But it was tough to get missions approved. We did a lot of armed recce's, basically trying to move to contact. We didn't really have any direct contact any of the times we were there, and we pushed the envelope pretty hard. We did this, multi-day dismounted patrols way back into the mountains and stuff like that. And we knew, obviously, we had our, we had Sade that was attached to our team, which for you guys, can we talk about that or no?
I'm going to do some enabler episodes.
Let's say, we had a SIGINT team that was attached to us. I won't get into all the specifics because I think some of that's sensitive. Some SIGINT guys that were there to collect, so we knew what the enemy was saying about us when we were there generally, we had our interpreter listening to the radio. They knew what channels to listen to and the icons and stuff like that. So we would know that enemy were there, had eyes on us, but they never showed their face. They never came out. I don't know why. I mean, so part of me says, thank God they didn't, because it didn't put us in a situation where we took casualties. But at the same time, I wish they would have, because I would have liked to, do my job. So the deployment was kind of weird. I mean, we were up there, and a lot of my memory is super foggy on this stuff, but we were up there for months, and it was an 8-month deployment, so we're up there probably 3 or 4 months. And then there was some intel came that bin Laden was potentially down in Tora Bora again. And I don't know where this came from.
And this is in 7?
This is 07. Yeah.
Okay.
And so so this came to the Siege of Soda, and they said, all right, well, we want to be part of this. So they took our team. We had to pack up basically all of our shit from our fire base, and we had to drive from Naray down to Jalalabad, which on those roads, half the way at least, was unpaved, rocky, shitty roads. It was grueling. We had jingle trucks full of fucking gear and stuff like that with Afghan drivers that one of them almost ran right into a fucking AMP station, like off the road, in almost right into the front door of the fucking AMP station. Everybody's falling asleep. It was like 20 hours straight or something, 18 hours straight. different stress level because you're driving in a combat zone versus driving on the highways in California and
Yeah,
the
somebody
other
might
story.
actually
But
just start shooting at you with a fully
or you
automatic
would have hit an
rifle.
ID,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, because
yeah,
now we're going into areas that we don't know. We've never driven south of a certain area, so it's like, oh shit, like are we gonna hit an ID? Because there wasn't a huge ID threat up by us because there was really just one road.
hmm
But down south, it's different. Well, down south by Jalalabad is different. And it was my first time ever really being in an urban environment. At that point, when we hit like main Jalalabad, for some reason, I was driving a Hilux most of the time. And then for some reason, I had shuffled around because we were shuffling drivers, and I ended up being in a turret as we were going through Jalalabad. And it's very tight through there. And I just remember, our TTP was in that environment. You lock the 50 cal down, and you pick up. We had Benelli, the Super 3000, Super 300s, or whatever it is, like the semi-auto, Benelli. So our TTP lock the 50 cal down because it was basically ineffective in that environment.
yeah.
Pull out your shotgun and basically sit up, like way up in the turret, and basically stand like way up in the turret and just point your shotgun at every fucking person you see. Right. So we drove through there. That was a little bit of a hair raising experience because I'm like, there's people everywhere. It's like a market kind of scene. And then we ended up, I don't know what was happening up at the Siege of Sodip level. I know JSOC was involved and all this stuff. It actually went back to, national levels and stuff like that, or who was going to do this thing. We ended up staying in Jalalabad with the dive team, 745, who tried to build a swimming pool at, I think they were the first ones to build a swimming pool at Camp Dyer, I think it was. They didn't finish it though. I think a team after them was another
If you
dive team.
give
They finished it.
if you give SF guys any free time,
Yep.
they'll go. You know what? I really wish we had a 2-story luxury condo here,
Yeah.
and then be like, hey, where's Jeff? Oh, he's carving something out of the mountain over there. What the fuck do you mean? Like, we got shit to do. You leave SF guys alone for 1 second, and they'll go do shit like that. Like, I need a
They'll build
pool.
a swimming pool.
I'll build a
Yeah.
swimming pool. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were there for like 6, 7 weeks, man. It just kind of drug on, and it wasn't anything to do. Sleep, eat, and lift. I felt like living like a SEAL there for a little while. Um, got really close with a dude who ended up getting killed later on, Jeff Kettle. He and I became lifting buddies. Um, they had a really nice gym down there, and the chow was phenomenal, way better than our chow. It was a bigger base. We ended up training an entire 82nd Aviation Battalion, or qualifying them, I should say, on spies and fries. So we were basically the spies and frisers, and their
Yeah.
pilots who were not certified, they were cycling them through. So we were doing day and night iterations for like 2 weeks, basically just doing spies and fries. It was pretty cool. It was killed time. And then finally we got the mission. We got our slice of the white soft slice of the mission came down, and it was to be a blocking force, right? So they were going to send in, the JSOC units to go into Tora Bora. So it was Rangers and the guys over the fence, and probably the SEALs over the fence went in, and they did a whole thing, but they bombed the shit out of it for like 2 nights, and they actually scrambled like, what was it, B-1 bombers or some shit out of the States to bomb it. So that was pretty cool to watch. But we actually did a split team. Um, Half my team was down in one area, and we were at the mouth of the valley with a OGA element that was a doctor to do. Essentially, the thought process is that when we bomb the mountain, a lot of civilians are going to be flooding out through the mouth of the valley back towards, Jalalabad, and it was Kogiani district or something like that, back through that district. And we were going to provide them medical relief if needed and get intel out of them, right? To find out what the fuck is really going on. Nobody came out of the mountain. Nobody came out of the valley. There was useless. It was basically a camping trip on GMVs for like 4 days or something like that. The unfortunate thing is that ODA 741, they were on the other side of the valley, so they had a different infill route. They hit an IED as one of their trucks was going into an overwatch position for the rest of the formation. They hit an IED. It was like, I think they assessed it to be like 3 155 rounds buried. It blew the truck up and flipped it backwards because they were going to an overwatch position, so they were up on a hill. and it blew them backwards, killed the driver and the passenger pretty much instantly. And then threw the turret gunner, his name was Rosario, threw him out. And as he got ejected from the vehicle, it shredded his entire like bottom of his leg pretty bad. So he was the only survivor of that vehicle. He was really physically and mentally fucked up after that. But Jeff Kettle and Clowers, blanking on his first name, they were the other two SF guys in the truck that were killed. And then there was a Terp and another, I think they had a human guy or something in the back of the truck, that when the truck flipped back over, it crushed them and they died. So
is this your
that was,
company or what?
yeah, my company.
Yeah.
Yeah. So ODA 741, I was 746. And so,
Okay.
so Kettle was the guy that I had become really kind of tight with. We basically were lifting weights every day and eating steak like you do every day. And, you know, doing our thing. Right. So, yeah, that was tough because it came over the radio that we had lost a truck, and then they did the call the roster numbers over the radio. And then I didn't know who it was because I didn't know everybody's roster numbers, you know, by heart. So when I came back, I found out who it was. We were trying to figure it out, but they wouldn't give any names over the radio, obviously.
Yeah.
And yeah, that kind of sucked. And then, you know, we exfilled out of there, and we were really that was a hairy moment because we were really scared that they had, you know, implanted IEDs because there was really only one way in and one way out of that area. We had to go through these canalized areas, and you know, we were very meticulous, and luckily we got through. Nobody got injured, but we did find out that my team sergeant was a coward on that mission. Then as soon as we got back after that whole operation was called Highland Serpent. So we were Serpent 4. Our team was Serpent 4-6, but our entire battalion was Serpent 7-2. You know, because you get your call signs or whatever. So every mission name had to do with a snake. So that was Highland Serpent was the name of that mission. But there was another mission that we had been planning for this area. The village was called Pittagal, and it was in Nuristan, like up this river. And I could be wrong, but until we went there, I don't think any Americans had ever been in that village. And all the intel that we had collected through the whole deployment we had assessed that was basically the C2 node of, you know, whatever remnants of Al Qaeda and the Taliban that were collecting the insurgents as they came across from Pakistan, do training, and then they would send them south down into Helmand and Kandahar to fight, and you know, down in that area. And so we had planned for this mission and sent up multiple concepts. They kept getting denied. And finally they gave us the go ahead to do it. So it was a 3 ODA operation. It was us, 745 and a Charlie Company ODA. And I cannot remember what ODA it was. But so we had 3 separate objectives. You know, it was a land on the X kind of thing, which in hindsight probably wasn't the best way to approach it, but there really wasn't another way. Unless you were to do like an offset and walk for a day and a half or something like that. So it was the 3 ODAs, and then we had, I don't know, like a company size element of A&A. There's a spattering of A&A, AMP, and our ASG guards, paid mercenary guys. Helicopters, task force, or well, I can't say that, but the 160th turned it down.
Yeah,
they didn't want to fly it because they just felt that it was too risky for they assessed basically it was a too low level of a target for them to risk where they were going to land and stuff like that. So we got it was a National Guard. No, that wasn't the National Guard. It might have been the 80 Deuce that flew us.
Okay.
82nd Aviation. It was kind of like hey, thanks for getting all our guys qualified on Spies and Fries. Yeah, we'll fly this mission for you kind of thing. I think it was 80 Deuce. So we had like 3 Chinooks and a bunch of Blackhawks. I can't remember the count, but everyone's cross-loaded. It was supposed to be a simultaneous infill, and you know, our team leaders, you know, the 3 ODAs made it very clear to the pilots it has to be a simultaneous infill, but apparently that didn't resonate with them. There was a mechanical failure on one of the aircraft, right? So we had to get off of that, get onto another one. It wasn't my aircraft, but they had to the further crossload to do that. But the one lift left and actually landed on their objective like 3 or 4 minutes before we hit ours, and ours was the main effort. And as soon as we landed, we realized that, the imagery we had from the winter that showed basically, these flat terraces with really no vegetation on them were 8 feet cornfields, 8 foot cornfields, right? So we land and we get off the back of the bird, and I've got my little team, and I had my objectives that we had to clear, that me and my G's had to clear. And we're walking through the corn, right? And we can't see shit. Nods don't matter because you got fucking corn in your face. We get through. By the time we get up to the village, and the village was actually up above where we landed, so we had to climb up the terrace to get up there. And so I'm pulling security and sending my Afghans up, and I'm shining my PEC. I don't even think it was a PEC. It might have been a PEC 4, not a PEC 5 yet. But anyway, I'm shining that shit up, and all I see is this mass exodus of military-age men just like flooding out of the village up into the fucking mountains. And we're like, God damn it, dude. I didn't know at the time about the time differential. It didn't filter down to us. All I knew was all these guys are leaving. None of them were armed, and I'm not going to shoot some dude running away in the back either without knowing if he's fucking, we had not gotten engaged, right? So these guys are all leaving, and I'm like, fuck, what are we going to do? Anyway, continue mission. We get through, clear everything. We had AC-130 cover, and they just fucking schwacked dudes left and right. I think the reports were that they killed like 30 or 40, people. I don't even know. Like, I don't know what they were seeing in their fucking optics up in the C-130, but they were laying down some 105 rounds and some 40 Mike rounds like crazy. Oh yeah. It was weird because, I was so, like you were talking about tunnel vision before, like I was so focused on, hey, I got to clear this building and then move here and then move here and move here. And we're talking and interrogating people as we go. Whoever was left was basically women and old men and children, and no real threats or anything like that. So we get through that. And I just remember at some point, it was probably after my second building that I had to clear. I remember getting on the radio and being like, hey, what the fuck is that noise? And there, my team leader goes, hey, you fucking dumbass, that's the AC-130. I was like, God damn, they're getting some work done, kind of thing. And then boom, keep going. And then we get through, we actually secure the area. It was, fairly, basically the village. We had, I would say there was a dozen different buildings that, we as a group had to clear. We get through, we reconsolidate, we're doing TQ. I actually wrote about this on the SF Brotherhood thing. So this is, you can go back and read, this account on there if you want, if you look at my posts or whatever. But we had obviously put out blocking positions to the different, MSRs coming in and out of the village, right? So we had a guy, with, off multiple blocking positions. We had a guy out with, I think he had 2 Afghans with him with a PK, and he had a saw, and he had I don't know, it was either the western or the northern approach into the village. And he watched like 2 or 3 dudes walk down, man jams, ammo vests, AKs, dressed completely like Afghanis. He watched them walk down, did not engage these guys. Why he didn't, I have no idea. I mean, they did an investigation after the fact. Those guys got into the village, started a small firefight with 2 of our guys that were on a rooftop providing overwatch. They wounded one of the guys, and the wounded guy went down, and I don't know why he did this. He was dumb. He went down and got into the building underneath them. Mm-hmm. And so one of the guys, he was actually the senior Charlie on the team at that time, he went down. His name's Adam Davis. Great fucking dude. Ended up getting wounded really bad in a blue on green incident in Afghanistan later on, about the time you were in. He went down, he fragged the fucking room, and then he went in with a saw. He had a saw. He went in with a saw, and he fucking stitched the dude across the face, which it was so unlike Adam. He was the nicest fucking dude, like the sweetest man I've ever met in my life. This guy, the first time we went out as a team drinking, he was like, hey, we're at a bar. He's basically the same age as me, 25 or so. He's like, hey, man, I want to get a drink. I'm like, well, what do you want to get to drink? He's like, I don't know. I've never had a drink before. I was like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, okay, well, how about you start with a beer? He's like, okay.
Okay.
And so he pulls out money out of his pocket, and it's like all crumpled up in his hands. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me right now, bro? I like pulled like $3 out, and I bought him a Miller Lite bottle or something like that. He's like that kind of guy, like
Yeah.
the most innocent, sweetest dude, nicest guy. He stitched that fucking dude across the face, point blank range with a saw, and I was like, God damn, Adam,
Well, that goes
go
back to the training and stuff, right?
100%.
Like uh the United States military, and especially the unit that we were in, our job is to kill people. Everything else is secondary. And the training and everything you do is to be lethal, to be a dangerous person, to go do bad things to bad people, when the people above us tell it to. And you know, uh, I I am now. I'm very relaxed now and calm, but I was an asshole when I was in group.
Oh
But
fuck yeah, I was a total
but
asshole.
you put somebody in that situation where everything just clicks on, and they're a completely different person. War is terrible, and
Yep.
it will and but yeah, anybody can get into that situation, and it's time to kill people, and then they'll turn it off and just be okay. Hey, can you? I need a wallet,
Yeah.
with your buddy. He's got crumpled up
Yeah.
ones, but when
Yeah.
he turns that on, he's a killer. So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, we were super proud of Adam. Um, and then so one of the guys got killed. I think there was two other guys, one or two other guys. We never actually to ruin the story. We never actually found the other guy or other two guys, but they started lobbing grenades at us from somewhere. So these guys actually obviously lived in the village, and this village is, they're all like buildings like mangled and mashed in between each other, right? So it's
Hmm.
like you don't know where one building starts and one building ends. They're just all connected, and they probably all have ways to get in and around them that we didn't know about because, we cleared our objectives and then we kind of did our thing. We didn't like, do a deep SSE. We weren't going to be there for longer than we needed to be. Anyway, so we're doing TQ, and they put me in charge of kind of Overwatch for TQ. So we're under this little Bondi, right? Little covered area, and we've got our pucks there, and we've got some human guys that were attached to us, and they're conducting TQ with the terp for these guys, and I'm just kind of providing security with dudes on the roof and stuff like that. Next thing you know, fucking grenades start going off, and I don't even know where they came from. I just remember shit kind of went dark. Shit. There was an explosion. Shit went dark for a few seconds, and then we kind of just got up, and nobody was really hurt. A couple of the human guys got like little teeny shrapnel wounds, and they all put in for Purple Hearts for it, which whatever. Um, now good for them. At that time, we were like, "You're fucking gay," don't
Yeah,
don't do that.
that's
But
the
it's good
interesting
that they
thing
did it.
of being in, and you go, oh, that's dumb. And then now that I've been a civilian for so long, I'm like, oh, get all the shit you can, because later on,
Right.
there's benefits and retirement and all kinds of
A
stuff from
hundred
having
percent.
all those things. So yeah, at the time you're like, but yeah, now it's like, oh fuck, I want everybody to get everything they can from the government.
It's 100%.
I
Yeah,
want
I
everybody to
totally
have
agree
their
with you.
VA rating. I want everybody to have their free college. I want everything for everybody.
Yeah.
Then some guys are like, "Oh, I didn't put in for a Purple Heart, and they lost half their eye or something like that." Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Well, yeah. So then that happened, and then that kind of changed the whole tone of that little mission, right? Because then it was like, okay, well, now we got to find these guys. So they sent me and another SF guy, Niall Harris, another fucking awesome dude. He and I, well, he took an element and cleared around one building, and I took another Afghan element, cleared around. And like as I'm coming around the corner of the building, I know we had another part of our team like across the road and down a little bit. So we did like little light, near recognition signal kind of thing. And as I'm coming around after they knew I was there, I was coming around the building, and a fucking hand grenade just goes whoop, whoop, lands right in the fucking street, and I'm like shit, and I kind of back my guys back up around the corner, and I see the senior Charlie, fucking Dave Hernandez. He was actually one of my instructors in the Charlie course. He was a guy who got blown up. You may have heard the story when there was a improvised cap. Well, this was the theory. There was an improvised cap underground. They were burning C4, and it set off the cap, which ignited the C4. he was one of the guys that was standing there that got blown up and was in the hospital for weeks after that. Came back, he ended up being on my team. And so I
Okay.
was like, oh shit, I know you. We called him the battle troll because he was like 5'3" and hairy all over. But great fucking dude, like hilarious fucking dude, just a great guy to be around and really knowledgeable. He was actually he was in 10th group before he went to SWIC, and he was on the team that secured that airfield in Mosul for the 173rd to jump in.
Oh, the combat jump.
Yeah, their combat jump. Yeah,
Combat jump.
he was like, yeah, I was there. He's like me, and it was like his team and another 10th group team basically went in, cleared that airfield, secured it. They jumped in, and then they were like, "Fuck you, bye," and they left. That was basically how that all went down.
I've heard
He
another
told me that.
story of guys said
Yeah,
they were watching the 173rd jump in while they were tanning in ranger panties on the
yeah.
edge of the
But
drop
there was
zone. And
nobody there. It was a
no,
completely empty fucking airfield. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So anyway, so fucking Dave, I I still to this day doesn't I don't understand why he fucking did this. I mean, I love him for it, but God, Dave, like it wasn't necessary. Him and Dre was one of our medics were there with their Afghanis, and Dave fucking runs out from this little alleyway or doorway or whatever he was in with behind cover. He runs out, grabs the grenade, and fucking chucks it down the street like in the opposite direction. And I'm like, I got on the radio. I was like, Dave, what the fuck are you doing, dude? We've all got standoff. Like
yeah,
he's behind cover. I'm around a corner, and we're both probably 20, 30 feet from this grenade. We're good. Like there was
yeah.
but it ended up being a dud. It never went off. I don't know if the dickhead didn't pull the pin or if he, if it was a dud. I don't know. It never went off. So after he threw it, it just landed. It never went off, and we just kind of waited and waited and waited. And we're like, I think we're good. And so then we just, continued around. And then they sent me and Niall back up, just the two of us back up into that house that we were doing TQ and to re-clear that. And then as we came in, I'm coming around the corner. I'm number one man, Niall's behind me. I come around the doorway and boom, fucking grenade goes off, like either right in the room or right near the window of the room. And it just kind of blew me back like that. And then Niall fucking pushes me through the door, right? And he did the right thing. I'm
Like
not,
you're supposed to,
he
yeah.
pushed, yeah, like he's supposed to. He pushes me right through the door. And I come around the thing, we clear the room, there's nobody in there. We're like, the fuck, where did that grenade come from? It was the weirdest thing because we never saw the dudes again, but these grenades were coming coming at us. And we had no idea. And we had guys on the roof. It was fucking weird. Um, and then, we tried to call fire from the AC-130. We thought that they had gone into the mosque. So there was a mosque that was like directly across the street, basically from the building that we had consolidated on.
Yeah.
And she just sort of did not approve bombing the mosque
Oh, no shit.
when we did not have we didn't have PID essentially that he was in there. We just thought he was. We basically said this is probably the most likely place that he is. Then they did not approve that mission. So then we had to hightail it out of there. In the meantime, I had at that point we all had PBS 14s, right? So and like I said, I'm tall, and those roofs are short.
Yeah.
I had broken as I was going around with those Afghanis. I had broken my nods mount off, and my PBS 14s were like hanging down. So at this point, they're in my cargo pocket, right? And I have no nods. And then my team leader goes, "Hey, you're on point for getting us out of here." And I'm like, "I got no nods." Oh, I don't think he want me on point. So I went to Adam. I was like, "Hey, Adam, dude, you got to take point, dude. I got no nods. I can't see. Just get us to this. We knew the trail. We were supposed to get off. So we get to the trail where we got our whole fucking gypsy camp behind us with our pucks and everything. We go down this fucking trail. We get to this, we get to the spot that was supposed to be our planned PZ. And Dave's up there doing the fucking chem light lasso, right? He's up there doing the chem light lasso for the helicopter. And helicopter comes in and basically over the radio says, "We cannot land there. And you got to get the only spot that we can potentially land is across the river. You guys got to cross the river." And it was a pretty wide river. Luckily, at that point, it wasn't super deep. It was probably like a little less than waist deep, like thigh deep or whatever. So we're like, fuck. But what happened was funny story. So Dave's up there on this little brick wall, this little stone wall, and he's up there doing this fucking lasso thing. So the Chinook comes down and tries to land. And as it does, the rotor wash like literally lifts Dave up off the wall into the air and blows him back down on the ground. And we're just laughing at him, the kind of shit that happens. And so we all get across the river. with everybody. We get there, and then we get called from AC 130 that there's, people are advancing these, what they assess to be, military age men.
Yeah.
I can't remember if they said they confirmed they had weapons or not, but they were advancing on our position. And the way it was structured, like the river came down, the village was over here, and then the river went around like a finger that came down, and they were just on the other side of the finger. And so they radioed us and said, these guys are coming, and, what do you want to do? And my team leader was like, he went to our CCT, Dale. Was it Dale at that point? No, it wasn't Dale. It was another guy. I got the pleasure to work with great CCTs. And he was like, well, it's danger close. I'm going to need your initials to do it. So they called in 1 or 2 155 rounds danger close. And
Oof.
me being a dumbass, right? So I'm behind this big ass boulder with Niall, and we're just kind of chilling. And so we get the word, hey, over the radio, we're going to call in danger close. Everybody fucking, find cover, get down, stay down. And I'm like, I want to watch. I want to see it. I'm peeking my head over this fucking boulder, and I just feel his hand grab my hand, rip me down, like, get the fuck down, dickhead. And good thing I did, man, because when those fucking things hit, like the first one hit on the other side of the finger, but the second one hit like just at the tip of it, and fucking rocks and shit just went all over the place, man. It was like you could hear him going right over the boulder, landing all around. Nobody got hurt or anything. But
You said 155s or 105s from the C-130?
105s, yeah, 105s,
Okay.
yeah, 105s. Sorry, yeah, not 155s.
Okay.
Sorry,
And
I'm on a roll, man.
How long was this whole engagement from touchdown to liftoff?
Fuck, that's a great question. Probably, I'd say probably 2 to 3 hours, maybe more. Yeah, we went in. It was all at night, and we got out before sunrise. I mean, that was a big deal. We had to get out. We had to get out before the sun came up, right? So I don't know. It might have been longer than that, honestly. I wasn't keeping track of time. I guarantee you, if I texted my team leader, he'd tell me exactly when it was. But yeah, I don't know.
Because he had to write the report.
Yes, he did. Yeah. And so get this. So we all fly back to our fire base where we started. And then at that point, everybody kind of reconsolidated. We did a quick, 100% on all our shit. The other ODAs got back in the birds, and they got dropped off at their fire bases. One was going to Camp Blessing at Assadabad, and the other one was going to back down to Jalalabad. So we're chilling. Everything's good. We do our hot wash, do our AAR. We get a fucking radio call from the CG Social. Actually, we get a phone call on the SIPR phone from CG Soda, and they're like, "Hey, I need 100% accountability of your radios right now." And so they call me over because at that point I was the 18 Echo, and my team leader's like, "Hey, we have all our shit." I'm like, "Yeah, I already did accountability of all our embitters." He's like, "All right." He's like, "No, we're good. We got all our shit." He's like, "No, I need like photographs of all your radios right now." And he's like, "What's going on?" And they're like, we're getting, because the emitter has that beacon, emergency beacon on it. They're like, we're getting a ping from an emergency beacon at an emitter beacon at your objective right now. It's live. And we're like, what the fuck are you talking about? And it matches the serial number of one of yours on your property book. And I'm like, and I look at him, I'm like, there's no fucking way. So I did. I took pictures of all the serial numbers. I did three times. I took accountability of these things. I got them back, and then finally they were like, "I don't know what the fuck was going on." And I never heard another thing about it, but that was kind of weird. That was strange. I don't know what the hell that was all about.
A little outside of my technical expertise.
But and another time they fucking radioed us all pissed off, and they said, "What the fuck are you guys doing in Pakistan?" I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? We're at the fire base. You just called us. We're here. We're all here. He's like, I got Blue Force trackers. Your fucking Blue Force trackers are in Pakistan.
Oh, yeah.
We're like, no, all of our trucks are right here. I don't know what you're fucking talking about. I mean, weird shit like that. I don't know if it was just the.
Well, you were an Echo, so you just saw there were solar flares.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I couldn't get comms, boss. So.
Yeah.
Well, so what do you. I spoke to.
That was it, though. After that mission, we were done. That we redeployed after that. Yeah, we redeployed. Oh, interesting story, though. So the team that ripped that back out with us, in that after that deployment, the third group team, that was Robbie Miller's team.
Sergeant, Medal of Honor recipient Robbie Miller.
Yeah, that was
That
Robbie
was
Miller's team.
that was 3 days ago, I think. Actually,
Yeah,
was
it
the
was.
anniversary of
It
that.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and I went through the Q course with him. I didn't know him really well, but I just remembered his face when I saw that shit go down. And then because when that happened, so when we got back, after we got back to Bragg, I went to the Fox course, and so I was in the Fox course when that shit happened, and it happened in Gowardesh, which was a place that we had been to several times and never had an engagement, but they got ambushed
yeah, so
coming
I
down
think
the road.
so. For people that don't know, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the story is that they got engaged bad, like they were getting it, and he was wounded, correct? And
Now, so what happened
didn't
was they were in a convoy, and so you gotta picture that this terrain was basically a road, and I believe the road that they were on was a road, a river, and then basically not cliffs, but just mountains that shot straight up out. So this
right,
valley was super tight, really tight. These fuckers would carry Dishkas, ZGUs, which are like those foot fired, what are they, 25 millimeter anti-aircraft weapons.
something like that,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, they would disassemble those fucking things and literally donkey those things up into the mountains on their backs in flip flops. Like that's how these guys operated, right? So they had these um crew serve weapons in different positions, and they were able to move them around, so you couldn't really keep track. So yeah, they were driving down, and I think they took basically what's that defilade fire right down
Yeah.
from up high. I went through went through the top of the GMV. I think the team leader got wounded in the leg, and none of the vehicles were disabled. There was no ID or anything. It was just crew serving small arms fire. So they ended up moving through the kill zone.
Yeah.
Then they were going to go ahead and attack. So they took they Robbie was basically ordered to take Afghanis and create a support by fire position for the element that was going to move up and basically attack this position wherever it was. And Robbie went up and they started firing. He had a saw, and then his Afghanis had, I think he had a couple other PKs or something like that. He got up there, he starts firing. They start orienting all their fire on his position, which is essentially what a support by fire position is supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
And his Afghanis fled. He stayed. He fired all his rounds, like two drums, two saw drums, and he got shot like I don't know 20 something times. I mean he got hit pretty bad. Got was killed. When they found him, he had no rounds left, and but he never broke contact,
Yeah.
never left.
That's yeah, I remembered it differently as that he held off the enemy force and his team had fallen back or something like that. But I sometimes get different stories confused
Yeah,
because but
and that's what I heard, and that's what I heard as part of the debrief because we and I'm not saying this to say that I'm right or anything, but that's what I remember from the debrief we got. That was pretty close after when it all happened.
yeah.
Um,
No, it's crazy. I mean, so much shit like that had happens. I went through the course with a guy named TK, and he was in what was that Peshawar Valley, Pektika Valley, something. It's the one where the 173rd had that Medal of Honor recipient.
yeah, that's up in Kunar. That's the Pesh Valley.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
or
but
or
he was in
Korengal
one
Valley or
company,
Wygo Valley.
and they were hanging out in that area for months and nothing happening. Well, then that company goes in there, and then they just get fucked up. It's just all
So
depends on things and
that
actions and
that happened when I was there. So that probably was '07. So though when we got to
well, that makes
Afghanistan, the 10th
sense.
Mountain guys had that AO from a conventional force. It was their cav troop, and I can't remember. I remember their troop commander was Colonel Howard. He was actually a good dude. Um, the 10th Mountain had that area pretty well locked down, and they had really good relations with the locals. So they weren't getting fucked up like the 173rd did when the 173rd ripped out with the 10th Mountain guys, and they started getting lit the fuck up, man. That whole area, whether it was down by Asadabad, like the Pesh Valley, Weigel Valley, and Korangal Valley, like a little bit south, and then you had like the Kamdesh Valley, which is near where Robbie got where Robbie got killed was kind of on the way to Kamdesh, is where the outpost that cop that got overrun in 2012, 13.
Something. There's so many stories. That's why I'm excited. I have this thing now, and I can talk to people and kind of fill in all the stuff and kind of ask questions about stuff I don't know and just meet people.
There's a really good book I'd like to share with you.
Yeah, send it.
So I fucking love this book, and it's written from the perspective of a Spec 4 who was in chosen company of the 173rd, who was at these places while all this shit was going down. And it's like you would expect the perspective of a Spec 4 or lower enlisted guy to write, talking shit about dumb decisions and stupid missions they went on. But it's really a good. I mean, some of it's sad, but it's. I gotta find it. So I'm looking through my Audible list here.
No, I know how that goes.
Fuck. Well, anyway, I don't want to kill time on the podcast doing this, but
Oh,
I'll get it over to you. But I kind of want the listeners to hear it too. Where is this? Oh, to quell the Korangal. To quell the Korangal.
Korangal Valley,
so,
that was it, yeah.
Yeah, that Korangal Valley, yeah. So, yeah.
So
then, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I just was saying. So do you feel like you got to do the SF guy thing? You got to, you went through the course, you got to your unit, you were accepted by your team, you went to combat. Do you feel like you did everything that you set out to do when you were wearing that suit every day? Is that what you set out to do? Did you accomplish that, or was there still more that you wanted to do? Because I've had other guys say it's never enough. It's never enough. Once you do the one thing, you want the next. Like you want to go to selection for the next level, or even CIA paramilitary groups. There's always that. Well, could I have done that? Did you accomplish what you wanted to do, or is it you're still wanting?
Yeah, I would 100% agree with your other guests or buddies who told you that. It's the rabbit hole, man, like Alice in Wonderland, So, after I went through the Fox course, became the Fox of the team, went to Columbia again, and I had just gotten a new team sergeant who came from the SIF, and so I started to talk to him a little bit about that, and about 4 of the dudes, including my team leader from that Afghan rotation, as soon as we got back, they got Sephardic slots, went to Sephardic and went to C-37. At that point in my career, I didn't feel like I had earned the right to do that yet, which was probably stupid and a little bit of imposter syndrome. But I didn't feel like I had earned the right. These guys were all senior to me and, whatever. So I stuck on that team. We did that Columbia rotation. But as I started to talk to that team sergeant that I had about the SIF, I started to really, and of course my buddies were over there, I started to really wonder about that. So I ended up getting a Sephardic slot, passed Sephardic, and went to my old team leader's team in the SIF. So he actually got to have 2 teams. So he's one of those team leaders that got 4 years of team time, which is awesome.
Good for him.
Yeah, so went over there, and they were prepping for an Iraq rotation. So they, that was a whole different lifestyle, right? I mean, being on a kind of a line ODA, doing the UW thing, direct action kind of recon stuff, direct action in the sense of what white side ODAs do. And this isn't like this isn't a bashing session. It's just what it is, right? Going over to the SIF was, it was as close as you could get to being on the other side of the fence without going to selection, right? Every single day almost. So Mondays were admin days, Fridays were refit days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we were in the shoot house, and it was all live fire all day long.
All the
And then
time.
sometimes we would do reverse cycle, come in and do night, do it at night. So it was extremely fast paced. I felt like, so remember back in that story, that mission in Afghanistan, that dude who failed to engage,
Yeah.
those guys who, yeah. So we took his tab, right? Cowardice in combat. We took his tab, rightfully so. You meet guys, and I think it's like anywhere you meet guys, and I'm trying to be very careful what I say here, because I don't want to disparage any person or, anything like that. But, I felt like the quality of Green Beret that was in the SIF was a different quality of soldier, at least from an experience and capability standpoint, than it was in the company that I was in prior. Right. So I felt like I was like part of a, more elite unit, if you want to say that. Maybe that's a shitty thing to say.
No, I don't.
I don't mean it that way.
Like everybody's got a different thing going on in their lives, right? And so you graduate and you get to group, and some guys think group is going to be completely different. They think it's going to be like that next level, and it's not.
Kicking doors and shit.
It's the most regular Army of the special operations units. I mean, it's still great. There's no comparison. You were never in the regular Army. The regular Army fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Like,
you're not the first person who told me that.
SF is the dumbest shit we did is still 10 times better than the best days in the regular Army. But being in the hallway on the 6 teams is one thing. But then, okay, well, I can go to Sephardic, like you said, and I can go to the crisis incident.
Well,
what is it called?
Yeah, they changed the name. So it was, when I was in, it was the CIF, which the CIF, the Commanders in Extremis Force, and then they renamed it to the CRIF, or the Crisis Response Force.
Yeah.
And now they don't exist.
Well, I just saw a post
I did
yesterday.
saw
Did you see
one.
that one? The Marine one?
I did. Like, what is actually happening
first group,
right now?
which is the Okie guys.
Yeah.
And I'm looking
Which
at
is where my first team sergeant came from. He was on the SIF team in Okie. First group SIF team in Okie.
I was like looking at the blur. I'm like, who is that? Who is that? Is that one of my buddies? Yeah, so stuff does exist or doesn't exist. But like you said, there's always that next level. And I think guys get on the teams, and there's a couple things that happen. They get fucked up by the Army life. SF takes their personal life from them, or their mental health, or their friends, or a lot of other things, and they settle into this, I wouldn't say like, they just settle into this rhythm where this is it. They're just doing that job, and they're not continuing to strive for the next level like they were to get to SF. They kind of get there and they stay there. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're still Green Beret. You're still one of the baddest people in the military, 1% of 1%. Fucking baddest guys, right? But there are those next level.
It never really ends.
It doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't
well, I certainly never saw the end of it. I did see the tunnel went a lot further. And, to your question is like,
it doesn't end. And the only thing that's going to hold you back are your intelligence and your fitness. Because at that, the guys that I know that went to selection are genius level, and some of the fittest people I worked with, like stuff I train all the time and stuff I couldn't do, like just amazing athletes and very, very, very smart. So that's but maybe some guys don't fall into that category, and they just want to do their job, or life as an adult sucks. And SF, you lose your friends, you'll lose your family at times, and the only people you have are on the team, and you rely heavily on that. And then it's going to end. You're going to get out one day after 20 years, or you're going to ETS, or you get med boarded like I did, and then you lose everything and you start drinking, And I got so bad I can't drink anymore. I don't like I'm sober 10 months now. Yeah, over
Good
10
for you,
months
man.
now. All I do is work out and eat steak and train for competitions that if they come up and stuff like fitness competition. But yeah, the life. Do you think it went by like too fast to
Bro, so
where
fast.
because you get to a point and you go, where did that go? Because now I'm a
I wish I
civilian
could do
and
it over
life,
again.
yeah, life moves, pretty slowly as a civilian. But the 8 years I was in the military was over,
Yeah.
gone, done. And
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck happened? So do you think it just went by? Did you ever stop to look around and go, I can't believe I get to do this? Or did you just look
No,
back on it? Yeah, it's
no, I
too
never
bad.
did, man. I was always looking for. I know it is. It's. I still don't do that. I should be better about that. More thoughtful of the way I go through my days. Yeah, I mean, so we deployed to Iraq, and an interesting thing happened. So when we got there, we're part of this joint task force, right? So we're one element of the guys over the fence, Rangers,
Yeah.
and things like that. And so at that point, they push, and we're reporting up to the guys over the fence, right? So
Hmm.
they're basically our headquarters. So they pushed those guys to Afghanistan, and then they took the Rangers and they pushed them up to crit. And so they come to my team leader, who at that point was our troop leader.
Hmm.
So the way the SIF team would deploy on those kind of combat rotations is two teams and it's essentially three teams, but two teams and a sniper element would deploy as a troop, right? So you had two troops in a SIF company when I was in. So you had
Pause for a
six
second.
teams.
How was the
Yeah.
how was the you did a PMT for a traditional Green Beret deployment? How was it compared to the
Yeah.
PMT pre-mission train up for deploying as a CRIF or CIV?
Well, way different as far as TTPs go,
Yeah.
obviously, because what we were doing as PMT for the my first team was more around mobility. Um, there were some how do we deal with the local populace, right? How do you
Hmm.
collect intelligence? How do there was some raid stuff in there too, but it was very rural kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Your traditional kind of Green Beret mission, right? Unconventional warfare,
Yeah.
right? Whereas, when we did our PMT for Iraq, we went to Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Hmm.
Kentucky, right? Yeah, Fort
Yeah.
Knox. And a lot of people probably don't know this, but on the way on the backside of Fort Knox, they have a state of the art urban warfare training center. And I think it's been funded and pretty much developed by JSOC. I don't know
Yeah.
that. I'm just supposing that. Um, to the point where they actually have its own airstrip that they were building when we were there so that the war machine could land there and they could execute targets there. They had like there was somewhere in there, I don't know where, but it was a little legitimately like a small city with, wrecked cars everywhere that somebody had a button could push on and that car exploded and fire came out and they could shoot simulated RPGs at you. Now, that was state of the art shit in 2008, when I
Yeah.
was doing it. I would imagine training has gotten a lot more realistic generally for all the softs. So maybe that's like for when you were in, that was maybe, the standard, but certainly wasn't when I was in. Um, and so all we did, basically all we did the entire time was we just continually hit targets. We did land on the X missions. We did fast rope on the roof missions. We did offset, had to, move tactically to an objective. And it was just iterative, right?
Yeah.
So they put me as the main breacher for our like not my cell, but for my team. So each team was divided into three or four cells, I think. So I was like the main breacher for my team because I had been in 18 Charlie
Hmm.
in the past, and the Charlie. So the senior Charlie on my team, 795, was actually on that mission in Afghanistan that I described earlier. He
Yeah.
got shot through the freaking trap on that mission on his objective. I didn't really talk about the other objectives.
Yeah.
This dude's a badass, man. His name's Scotty Scala. He's been out for a while. He was on the dive team, dive guy. He got shot through the fucking trap on that mission in Afghanistan, in his right trap, and refused medevac and just switched hands and continued to clear left-handed or with his pistol or some shit. I was like, dude, you're fucking badass. Anyway, so he was the senior Charlie in our troop, and so he's like, I'm not going to be the breacher. He's like, I'm going to train you to be the breacher because I know you're an 18 Charlie. I'm like, okay, sounds great. By the way, how do I do this? He's like, don't worry, I got you. So we go to PMT, and it was pretty much the first time that I was really put to the test as a breacher, and man, did I fucking fail. We got up to that first, I had a rigid linear, we got up to the first fucking door, I'm like fumbling with the tape, and I'm fucking sucking, and I could just feel the entire assault force behind me going, this motherfucker, dude, is fucking this up. And so, I don't know if it was Scotty or somebody just came and they ripped that fucking thing out of my hand. Oh, mind you, this is all live, right? So they ripped the fucking charge out of my hand. They throw the red chem light down, and now basically because we had multiple elements hitting the same building, so it was supposed to be simultaneous breach, and they're waiting on me.
Yeah.
And so then they basically called like a pause X. Y'all breach. We're gonna manually breach this door. Grimsgaard fucked up. He's a douchebag. We have already fired him for being breacher. It literally fired me that like when we got back, he counseled me and was like, yeah, you're fired. I'm like, I got it. I fucked up. Not a big deal. Anyway, so we went through, and that's all we did for PMT. And then when we got to Iraq, that's all we did. It was, they divided us into, because we became the main effort at that point because all those other guys left. And so they divided our troop into a day and night troop. One thing I didn't talk about earlier, I don't know if this is still around when you were in, or new guys that went to a course called the Merlin course in England.
The word sounds familiar.
Yeah. So that was such an awesome course. So I was in England for I want to say it was 8 weeks long.
Okay.
And so the guys who trained us, it was basically the Blackwater of England, right? Some contracting company, and they did this training. Their former SRR, the Strategic or Special Reconnaissance Regiment, and all the guys that trained us were part of, the Northern Ireland problem and the troubles and all that stuff. So they basically trained us the way that they were operating, doing close target reconnaissance and surveillance and stuff like that in Northern Ireland. And man, it was unfucking believable. But I was the only guy in our troop that had that training. And there was a program at the time, and I can't talk too much about it, but there was a program at the time there at the fire base that we were in that kind of dealt with that, right? And so when we got there and we got our briefing, they were like, oh, you got to give bodies for this. You got to give a body for this. You got to give a body for that. And so they took me and a warrant officer, and they were like, okay, you guys are going to go do this thing over here that's related to that course, like surveillance stuff. And I was like, okay, sounds good. I was like, but can I still go on ops? They're like, yeah, you can still go on ops with us. I'm like, okay, cool. So I go over there. It's, I had to sign an NDA, go behind the fence within our little fire base, within a fire base, within a fire base. And I'm in this little area, and I start doing this stuff, kind of supporting this warrant. Well, I don't know what really happened with this warrant. And at that point, it was one of the squadron commanders from the guys over the fence. He might be a 4-star general right now. Might have just taken over a major army command in Europe.
Okay.
So they did not get along, and there was a lot of trust there. So he got fired pretty quickly. And then they were like, okay, you're now in charge. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, I'm in E6 at this point. I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, okay, I got it.
Figure it out.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. Ain't no big deal. And so I was doing that during the day. Basically, I had the Cub or the Bub, the battle update brief or combat update brief or whatever. So I, was responsible for doing mission planning, then briefing the squadron commander and staff of what we were going to do that day, and then debrief at the end of the day about what we saw in our close target reconnaissance, right? And basically that developed into a target packet that our guys would go and hit. And that was what created our targeting cycle for the most part. We had other intel coming around from other places, but generally that was what it was. So I would do that during the day. my guys would be out, and then they would come back. And then, if it was a cool mission that the guys were doing that night, or they needed an extra body, like I'd hop on the truck and go, and then I'd come back the next day and maybe get a couple hours of sleep and do that other thing. We had a really cool operation. Should think this is public forum, so let me think about how I can describe this in a it's a good story. So there's this I'm just going to say a whole system of how you basically mark out any given area. Like take a city, for example, right? So there's a very specific system of the way you identify particular intersections and places of interest within a city. And it's like a multi-layered way of identifying, right? Uses colors and uses shapes and things like that, right? And this is how you direct and communicate of where you are, where you're going, where you've been, and all that kind of stuff when you're operating like a dynamic surveillance operation with multiple elements. And so we got information from this other little element of our guys that were doing some technical stuff, that this one guy that was like the top of our target list, that he was in this one place. And so we're like, oh fuck, like, is it for real? And we actually did get confirmation through technical means, visual confirmation that this guy was actually there, and he was the number 2 guy on our target list. And he was a media influencer, right? So he was out there posting all the Al Qaeda shit, on the dark web or whatever it was back then. And so obviously we want this guy, right? So this immediately becomes top priority for our little task force, right? And so we had to like switch dudes out because of the different skill sets of the different guys that we had in our little section. And we switched these guys out. We ended up doing this like 4-hour long foot, vehicle, and bus surveillance of this dude, where the only communication we had was one of the local nationals calling back on a cell phone when they had cell service to our fucking TERP. Cat 3 Terp, who then communicated to me in English about where they were going based on this system that they knew and they had already been trained on prior to me getting there, that I also knew. And then I had to basically educate the task force commander of this whole thing. So it was basically this communication path was going on, and it came to me, and then I had to radio back to the TOC where they were, what they were doing. And so they had situational awareness of what was going on through this whole thing. Meanwhile, they had pushed the assault force forward to a location, and the assault force was continually moving to stay away from this whole surveillance operation to not, tip our hand. And so they're kind of like shuffling around every once in a while to go around as these guys move through the city. This guy ended up getting on a bus. And one of our guys was let's just say a very unassuming, no one would ever think he was working with us, got on the bus and was able to confirm what seat the guy was on, what he was wearing, on the bus, boom, 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 how many seats back, who he was sitting next to and all that shit. We actually launched the assault force and took a bus down in Iraq. Like a fucking, like a city bus, like you would see in like the city. Like it's actually, obviously Iraqi style, very old, decrepit bus, but like a full size fucking city bus. And the assault force went down and took it down textbook. In fact, the guy on the bus that we had on the bus got video of the whole thing. And so they come through, they go through the bus and they clear the TTP that I can't talk about, but they clear this bus. They take like, let's say they're going after this one dude, right? They take like 12 dudes off the bus, 12 people off the bus.
Yeah, you got to
and they start like
ambiguity.
Exactly. So they do that, and as they're questioning these guys, they kind of take the one dude off to the side, put a hood over his head, put him in a fucking zip tie, and put him in the back of a truck, and a truck takes off and brings him back. And then these guys, they just kind of quietly let them go. Did a little bit of SSE on the bus and fucking took off. So that was fucking cool as shit, because there were times during that mission where like they were in areas like this one area in Mosul is called this is in Mosul though. Yeah. This one area of Mosul called the Bab al Tube Market, which is like a it's like a Star Wars fucking scene, right? Like a market. I've never personally been there, but I've seen pictures of it, right? We weren't allowed to go there. It was not a safe place. Not a place you want to go for like fucking Sunday brunch, right? But because it was like really, really tight and because it was covered to protect from the sun and everything, there was no cell service in there. So there was periods of time for like 30 minutes where there was no cell service and no comms from these guys. So the pressure that I was getting from the talk to provide updates, and I'm just like, sir, they're in the fucking market. They got
Yeah.
no fucking cell service. And they actually told me when they came back that they actually lost a guy like 3 times in the market, but ended up picking him back up. And so whenever they could, they would switch out. And then once somebody would come back and call and say, hey, this is what's going on. So it was pretty wild, man. I don't know of another time, certainly not another time in in Iraq where a SIF team took down a fucking bus. And if you know anything about CQB, linear
I
targets, as they're referred to, buses, planes, trains, theaters,
yeah.
they're not common.
One thing I've learned is somebody's always got more awards. Somebody's always stronger than
Yep.
you. Somebody's always got
Yep.
better stories. Somebody's always done something. So somebody's got some story, and I say, I
I'm
don't give,
sure.
I
I'm
don't give
sure.
a shit. You know, I don't
It's
I
a
don't
cool story
care.
to me. That's,
So I
for
think,
me, it was
but
cool.
now a couple things from like that story you told there. It's like I can't imagine explaining that just that one operation, right? To my unit that I was in the regular army. We couldn't even hold PT correctly. Like how, and that was a battalion. We couldn't even have PT as a battalion. And you want them to do this like
Orchestrate
the
that. Yeah.
level of stress and professionalism and training and all that other things that it takes to do that. And then you have to have people that are so committed with their whole lives, right? That are just, that's all they do. And then it
Well,
gets
I can
back
tell you
to,
right now that the guys in the assault force were they were salivating over
oh,
doing this, right? There was no way in hell that they were not going to fucking take this bus down.
oh yeah. And
One
then,
way or another, they were doing
and,
it because,
and they're, and it goes back to that thing. It's never enough, right? That's one thing where you chase that objective your whole career and you get to go, this is the moment where everything comes together, all of the training and the bullshit and the agencies and the command and control. This is the moment. And then you do it and it's over and you go, well, fuck.
Yeah, I mean, there was high fives and shit. We drank some beers after that. It was a great moment. But yeah, it's so I kind of sidetracked into that story, but we were talking about the rabbit hole, right? So as I was doing that job,
Yeah.
so that that job and that program was run from a certain section within the guys over the fence, right? They've
Yeah.
got multiple mission sets, right? One of their guys, I think he was an E8.
They're all EAs.
We're all plain clothes, right? So
Yeah.
he's an E8. Comes in, he's under alias. He's like, hey, my name is, they say it's Gabe or Bryce or some shit. He's like, hey, how you doing? I'm Bryce. And I guess I don't know, like I don't. I guess I was doing a pretty good job at it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
he was just like, "Hey, man," he's like, "You enjoyed doing this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I actually really fucking like it." He's like, "You want to do this? You want this job? You want to do this? You want to come over and do this for us?"
Was
And
he
I'm
talking
like,
support
well,
side of the house or for the direct
well,
action side of the house?
more on the support side, but it's more on the
Okay.
intel side,
Okay.
right? So yeah, so basically doing all the assisting with targeting, right? Kind of going in and anyway,
Yeah.
doing the ground intelligence piece to support operations. And so I'm like, yeah, I do. And I'm like, who the fuck are you, by the way? And so then finally he's like, hey, here's blah blah blah, my name's this, and I'm over here, I do this, and this is the team that we have. And he was like, look, he's like, when you get back, here's my card. When you get back, give me a call. If you want to do it, let me know. All you got to do is do an 18-mile ruck in under a certain amount of time. You got to do a PT test, pass this, and do this. He's like, you'll be fine. You
Yeah.
don't have to take the long walk and do all that shit. Which I had contemplated doing that anyway. But at that point, I was 30, 28, 29, so I kind of was feeling my body a little bit differently, you know? And so I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know if I'm really physically up for that challenge. So anyway, but I was really interested in that. And then probably 2 days later, again, I'm on the phone with my wife. You know, we had a young daughter at the time. She was about to turn 1. And she was teaching at Hope Mills Middle School. And she just called, you know, we're talking, whatever. And she's just like, look, I don't want to do this single life anymore. She's like, I don't want to teach anymore. I'm fucking over it.
Yeah.
And she's like, you know, we have a 1 year old, and this is not the life that I want. And so it kind of sunk in at that point. And, you know, within probably minutes of her saying that, I pretty much brushed that other opportunity aside. But that was the rabbit hole, because he told me, he's
Oh,
like,
that's
hey,
if
look,
you go down that, that's going to take the rest,
yeah,
everything else from you. That's a
he's like,
sacrifice that you're going to have, that you still want to make.
yeah, he's like, all you'll do is owe me 2 years. He's like, I'll get you the farm and I'll get you this and that. He's all these other fucking schools. He's like, you'll be deploying like one or you know, two up, maybe three dudes, 2 areas for short periods of time to do your job, come back. He's like, I will get you promoted to E8 within 2 years. I was like, what? And
Oh yeah.
and you know, after that you can do whatever the fuck you want. Just give me 2 years. And I was like, fuck, that's easy, you know? Um, and then, you know, I brushed that aside, and then it was probably like, I don't know, a week later, you know, had a little, just our little team, ODA 795 meeting as we were kind of, our deployment was wrapping up. And I took my team sergeant aside and I told him, you know, I think I'm going to get out. He was like, what? It's like, yeah, I
Yeah.
think I'm going to get out. And so,
You learn how
yeah.
good of a leader you have when
Oh,
you bring
dude,
that
my
stuff
team
up.
sergeant, Shane Thompson, he was the best fucking soldier, the best leader. He was the best NCO I've ever seen in my short time. He was fucking awesome.
That's
I love
good
that
because
fucking dude.
you tell and you can find out how real quick how big of a piece of shit somebody is when you tell them that, and you tell them why you're doing it, and they just brush you off or something. You find out how good of a
Yeah.
leader you have right then.
He joined the army at 17 on a ranger contract
Love it.
back in the 80s, right? Early 80s. Um, First fucking, like, you know, did whatever, you know, went through ranger school, did all that shit. He's 18 years old, jumps into fucking Panama or Panama, and he's describing this to us, to me. I don't know who else was in the room, but it was honestly, everything shut down when he's telling the story because it was so wild. He's 18 years old. They leave fucking Bragg, or they leave wherever the fuck they left from, um, and they're in flight rigging under fucking red light. He's like, dude's fucking leg straps were in between each other. Like, he's like, it was all fucked up. He's like, Joe Masters were coming by and just like feeling and then smacking you on the ass, telling you you're good to go. And then they were unfucking themselves, you know, afterwards when they figured out shit was all fucked up. And then they fly, you know, they did a, you know, whatever it was, 800-foot fucking jump over Panama. He said the tail ramp goes down and all I saw was green tracer fire and they fucking jumped out. I'm like, you're 18 years old doing that shit, dude. That's fucking nuts. And then, you know, he was in the army, you know, obviously for a while after that, got out of the army, was doing like, not bounty hunter work, but he was doing like repo work. So he was going around and like, no, I think he actually was a bounty hunter. I think he might have been a fucking bounty hunter. And then he was out of the army for like 6 or 8 years and then came back in, had to go back through basic training and all that shit again. And then ended up in SF and was my team sergeant. And
Just a
he was unfucking real, man.
just a tough, hard
Oh God.
individual. You know.
The dude was so fucking tough. This whole time he was our team sergeant, he had developed this nasty malignant tumor thing
Mm-hmm.
that had basically taken over one of his lungs. Like, it was growing around his lungs. And he was coming up on 20 whatever years and needed retirement, but he had to have this crazy invasive surgery to go in and remove all this fucking shit, you know, out of his lungs. But so he was waiting. I don't know all the medical stuff that he was going through, but he shared that with us. But he ended up having that surgery, and I I met up with him a few years ago for a retirement ceremony, for his retirement ceremony, and I can't remember if he had already had the surgery or not, but I haven't heard from him since. He's gone completely dark, man. I hope he's all right. He's such a good dude.
I'll track him down. I,
Yeah. Oh no, trust me, we have. He doesn't respond. It's kind of one of those things.
yeah, sometimes you just had enough and you don't want to see. That's yeah. I get that. I get that. I certainly do. Um, so anyway, so you make the decision to transition out ETS, right? So you would have had
Mhm.
what? You got out in 10,
7 years.
seven
It was
years?
basically right on 7 years. Yeah. It was
Okay.
crazy because in 7 years, I had three fucking SFMOSs.
Mm.
I, I don't know. I feel like when I tell people these stories, they don't believe me.
I do.
I
I
basically was
mean,
either in school or I was deployed.
oh, I mean, I run through
That's
my
why my
eight
wife
years.
hated it.
I went to basic, in the summer. Got to my unit. That was dumb. I went to selection right away. 90 days after I got to my unit, I got hurt, came
Oh
back,
shit.
and just goofed around. Went back in at the first class after summer, so September I think or August, and past that came back to my unit. They got deployment orders, so I went on rear D. Didn't really do anything. Went through the course. Um, I was in training or in school half my time, and then I was in Korea for a year and a half when I was in SF, and then one day it was over. And so,
Yeah.
but there's people like, you did all that shit. I was like, I didn't do anything compared to some of the people. Like when I was a tasking NCO,
That's how I feel. That's how
yeah,
I feel.
like when I was a tasking NCO, I'd see where everybody was going, and all the places and people would go on these things and trips and have to go all over the place. I'm like, man, you don't even know. Like I didn't do anything compared to some people. Like my
It's never
buddies,
enough, though. To your
you know,
earlier point, it's never
it
enough.
it isn't. My buddy, he's the SOC South Sergeant Major, and
Oh,
he's
okay.
always posting on Facebook. He's in he's like he only got it. He only took the position because he's like the people in front of him kept retiring, and he's like, well, I guess I'll do one more. I guess I'll do one more. Well,
Mhm.
now he's this man. That man is busy now, and finally he's retiring in 11 months. So I can't wait to go to
Oh,
his
that'd be
thing.
awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited for him for it to be done 30 some years. So, but
Wow,
um,
30 years.
yeah, when I finally get to interview him, he'll say the same
That'll
thing.
be
Yeah,
awesome.
it
Yeah.
went by too fast. So, how was that transition from going 1,000 miles an hour to I'm a civilian now? How was that for you?
Yeah. You know, I, it, I mean, it was difficult, but I don't think it was as difficult as some guys have it, honestly. Um,
Well, you made the
I had
choice. You
already,
made the choice to get out, so that's one thing.
I, I did, I
Yeah.
did. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's definitely a different perspective for sure.
yeah.
But I had also worked in the civilian sector before I joined. So I kind of knew like I knew what to expect
Hmm.
somewhat. I was lucky. Um, I got hired on at Cisco Systems,
Okay.
which is essentially what brought me up here to the Raleigh area. Um, I had essentially a cohort of veterans that worked there that were looking for veterans. They didn't have an official program. In fact, all the shit that exists now, like the Special Operations Transition Foundation and the Green Beret Foundation, and all of these great things that exist right now to help guys prepare for that transition, really didn't exist back then, or weren't like I didn't know about them. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
We had our what's it, the army transition process or whatever the fuck that was, which was completely useless.
Terrible.
Um,
Even
it was
I got out in 18 and it wasn't great. It was switching, but now like Green Beret Foundation, they send the VSOs to the transition briefs to tell these guys exactly what you need to do to get out.
yeah.
And I was at like the beginning of that, and my unit was gone, so I was getting med boarded, and nobody was telling me the right things, and I was mad, and it wasn't good. But right kind of after that in 20, these they started using social media more and using their influence to tell dudes how to get out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good that
It's phenomenal. It's
it's
phenomenal.
it's great now for guys getting out. But it's good you fell on a community. Like I didn't want to get out. I took it really badly, and I probably drank too much. I definitely drank too much when I got out. So,
Well, to be fair, I didn't really want to get out either, right? It was more of a decision I made for the health of my family
yeah.
than for myself. I mean, like I could still be doing it now, and jokingly, sort of joking, not joking, like it's probably the only reason why I try to keep myself in somewhat decent shape because I'm hoping the phone's going to ring one day and say, "Hey, we need you to do this."
I say that
But
same thing, man.
the
I say the
reality
same
is
thing.
not. The reality is that's probably never going to happen, and I'm not unrealistic about that. But um, it's not to say that I looked at being a regional security officer, Department of State, and I'm fucking really glad that that didn't happen based on what I know now. I looked at CIA paramilitary. In fact, I was in the pipeline for that for a little bit until I withdrew. Um, I looked at Secret Service. I
I've
looked
looked at
at
that too.
FBI HRT. I looked at, and when I say I looked at them pretty hard. And
Yeah.
then I had an offer to contract and go back to Afghanistan. Um, and I think it was like they were going to, I think it all worked out to about $150,000 a year.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's fucking really good money. I don't have anything right now. And like, should I do this? And thank God I went to this job fair that cannot remember how I found out about, but I went to this job fair. It wasn't really a job fair, frankly. It was really like a panel thing
Hmm.
for IT for vets in IT. And I can't remember how I found out about it, but I went to that fucking thing and I was sitting there and I had shoulder surgery. I had rotator cuff surgery right before I got out. So I'm in a suit and a sling, and I'm sitting there in the fucking thing listening and I'm looking around and I'm like looking around at who's there and I'm like, okay, I'm the only fucking Green Beret in this whole fucking room. Like they can't use me. Like they don't know what to fucking do with me. Like I don't even know what the fuck. But and so this one guy who was a Marine JAG officer who was working at Cisco made a comment and he said, "Yeah, we've got Green Berets that work here." And I'm like, "You got Green Berets that work there? What do they do?" And so afterwards we had a little opportunity to network these guys. So I went right up to that dude and I was like, "Hey, introduce myself and blah blah blah." And I said, "Hey, I'm Green Beret. I'm getting out, and um, what the fuck are Green Berets doing at Cisco?" And basically said it just like that. And he just kind of laughed and was like, "Hey man, they're doing all kinds of shit. Like, and we had a little conversation and I tried to impress him a little bit about my knowledge of the company and stock and everything like that, which I guess, to some level he was impressed by to some level. And he fucking was like, "Dude, you have a resume?" I'm like, "Yes." He's like, "All right, here's my email me your resume." I'm like, "Sweet." So I got back in my car and I can't remember if I had it on my phone or I had to go back home and get on a laptop because again, this is 2010, right? I don't think I had an iPhone in my pocket at that time. I think I had some Android piece of shit, like early Android. And and I not to bash Android, they're fine. I'm just saying I didn't have a fucking supercomputer in my pocket, right? So I think I had to go
Yeah, like
home
we
and
do
email
today.
him from my laptop, like we do today, right?
Yeah.
And I had to go home and email from my laptop. And about 4 hours later, he responds and he goes, "Hey, I hope you don't mind, but I made some changes to the wording in your resume." I'm like, "No, I don't fucking mind. This is a successful guy at a Fortune 500 company who is a JAG officer.
Yeah.
I think you could probably write better than me." So I read it. I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And then he was like, "And do you mind if I socialize your resume with some people in the company?" I'm like, "Fuck no, dude. Please, by all means." And within like 2 weeks, I was on the phone and having phone conversations and that kind of thing. Bro, I actually applied to be a campaign manager there's a National Guard SF guy that was running for Congress
Okay.
from New York State, like up where, where Nyack is? It's like up on the Hudson River,
Okay.
that district, whatever congressional district that is. He was running, and there was this whole, and it still exists. There was this whole like SF email group that you could get on. You just gave them your email, and then you would get flooded with job opportunities for soft guys.
Yeah.
Most of it was overseas contracting, but I saw this one came across as a campaign manager. They actually wanted me to come on, and I'm like, I don't know fucking shit about running a campaign, but all he wanted was a fucking SF guy. on it. And, I had a college degree and blah, blah, blah. So I guess he figured I could do it. Luckily, I didn't take that job because he didn't get elected. I would have been spinning my wheels again after that. But that's how fucking weird it was. And then I was, like I said, I was talking to Cisco, and they finally hired me on as a contractor. So, and they were going to pay me $100,000 a year
Yeah.
to sit on my fucking house on a laptop. And I'm like, well, why am I going to go to Afghanistan for 150 when I can sit on my ass? And then I ended up being a contractor and actually making a lot more than that for the next 2.5 years, which was great. And then they hired me on full time. And then, I've since moved to a different company, but yeah, got into sales, and life has been really good. I mean, I can't complain. It's been really good. I forgot to mention that they hooked me into the Guard. So, I still had 5 months left on my minimum service requirement.
Yeah. 8 years. Yeah.
8 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they hit me with you're going to get stop loss. Their stop loss in 18 series and all this shit. They're recalling you guys and stuff like that. So I joined, I joined the Guard, and I was in, Bravo Company 3rd Battalion 20th Group here in, Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. I did that for a year. I didn't really like it that much.
I think my buddy's in Bravo, but that's now. But
Yeah.
well, yeah, the National Guard side, that's whatever. Now that's over. So
Way
yeah,
different.
that's interesting. You say, you got to stay ready. Like, I could go back to a team today. I mean, no problems. Now
I don't think they'd want me, but
there are no physical restrict. My injuries. Yeah, I even talked to the SF recruiter. I was like, what do we got? What do we got to do to get me back in? He goes, we could do everything to get you back in, and then it still wouldn't work, and then you're fucked. I was like, okay, well,
dude, Nick Lavery made it happen, dude.
Yeah, Nick's still doing it. He was never medically retired, though.
No, I know. That's true, I guess. I guess once that's on your record.
Yeah, there's a big, so once I can try, and then if I fail, then I'm fucked. So we're just,
you just got to write an email to Mike Waltz, man. He'll hook you up.
I guess, yeah, I could, or Matt Gates. We could just go right to the Secretary of Defense, the new Secretary of Defense, and just Exith, can I get back in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually met Mike Waltz. I was out for the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Went out there actually with my old team leader and his family and my family. We met up there, and we were walking through the Airborne Museum in St. Mary Lease, and fucking Mike Watts and his wife and this other couple were like walking through. I'm like, hey, Congressman. And he comes over, he's wearing an SF fucking fleece, fucking arrowhead and fucking SF tab. And I'm like, hey, sir, how you doing? My name's so-and-so. This is my buddy. We're Green Berets. We were 7th group and everything. Dude, he was cool as fucking dude. Just sat there, chit-chatted for about 5-10 minutes or something like that. Introduced our wives and stuff like that. Really down to earth, really cool dude. So, hopefully he's effective in that role as National Security Advisor.
I hope everybody says does all the great things they said they were going to do. And I hope everybody's going to be happy and hunky-dory, and it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows. But we'll see. But that is nice when you meet somebody and they turn out not to be a dick.
Yeah, he was super cool.
Wow. Well, this has been a good conversation, man.
Yeah, 3 hours and 13 minutes.
3 hours and 7 minutes. That's good. I got a couple questions here. I've been trying. I might rework some of them. 5 questions. I'm wrapping up everything or my interviews with, just to see how everybody responds. But so, the phrase "thank you for your service." What's your reply to "thank you for your service"? What do you say when people say that?
That's a good question. I just say no. I immediately say thank you, and I say it was a pleasure, and I'd do it again tomorrow.
I like that one. I say it was an honor. It really was. That's what I say.
Mm-hmm.
So SF guys are operators, right? What is the one characteristic that sets operators apart from conventional forces? Just if you had to pick one.
SF guys in general, or all soft?
SF, tier 1, tier 2 operators.
Ooh. I would say one thing.
Yeah.
Never quit.
Yeah. Just get it done.
Never
Just
quit.
never,
Yeah.
never quit. So if you could go back and relive one moment of your career, the highlight of your career, if you could just go back and relive one moment, what would it be?
Oh God. I gotta think, is it a fun time or like a cool time? Oh shit, that's tough, man. I'd want to live the whole thing over again.
Yeah, right.
Now, do I get to change anything, or does it have to be just reliving the same experience?
Well,
Sorry
you
for
know,
all these
no, you can. I mean,
questions, but
we're not going to play Back to the Future rules. You could probably change something.
okay.
It might create a new
Um,
timeline, though. Have you seen Endgame? And I don't know.
yeah, I think if I had to relive anything, um, it probably would have been that moment in Iraq where I made the decision not to stay in or when not to do that other thing.
Hmm.
I think I would have made the decision. I would relive that, knowing what I know now, um, about the health of my family and relationships and stuff like that. I probably would have made the decision to do it,
To do it.
and I think everything would have turned out okay.
Because after you did your additional, what do they call it, an ADSEG, additional service obligation? I think that's the actual term for it, is you would have been able to do whatever the fuck you wanted. Whatever you wanted. So it is
Yeah.
interesting. But you never know. You could have
Well,
got totally fucked up on some mission where you couldn't even talk about it, and then you would just be a
no, that's what I
star.
say.
A
Yeah.
star. You wouldn't even have your name up anywhere. You'd just be a star in a hallway, and nobody would ever know anything about you. So it
Nobody would
could have
know.
been completely fucked up.
Yeah, but
So,
I would have lived. I would have loved every minute of it.
oh,
You know,
absolutely,
I'd.
never enough. And then you
Yeah.
would have never
Yeah.
turned down the next thing. And so, um, what's the best piece of advice that you received during your time in service?
Oh wow. Oh man. Best piece of advice I ever received. Okay. There was a lot, and I feel like a shitbag for not remembering all of it. Um, but the one thing that comes to mind right now is it was about reputation at Select. That your reputation starts here,
Mhm.
right, and it never ends.
You're always
Like
being
it,
assessed.
you're always being assessed. Exactly. That was probably the best piece of advice because despite what we talked about being a dick and being cocky and all that stuff, which is pretty much par for the course for soft guys.
Yeah.
Um, I think that was my best piece of advice because, never ever did I want to develop a bad reputation or be known as someone who a teammate couldn't trust or couldn't count on. And I hope that I, lived up to that. I couldn't answer that question. Only my teammates could, but that would probably be the best piece of advice because it really kind of, it was early, right. And it kind of set me mentally on the right path, I think.
Yeah. I guess some of those assessments you don't find out for years and years. I just ran into my buddy from Robin Sage, and we hadn't seen each other or really talked in the last 10 years. And he had the nicest, to his junior, he had the nicest things to say about me. And we just ran into each other at doing hurricane relief, and
Oh,
his
okay.
junior was there, and he had the nicest things to say about me. And it just felt so good. I was like, oh, that's, but
Yeah.
it's
I
that
mean, there's
10-year
nothing better
process
that, yeah,
to be like,
but there's nothing
oh,
better to hear another SF guy say good things about you because that's,
my friend's a bad
at the end of the day, it's
motherfucker.
all we care about. But that's all we care about is
Yeah,
being a good teammate, right? So
yeah.
like, yeah.
So,
Where are
and
you doing
then,
hurricane relief in North Carolina?
yeah, so I got a
Oh, wow.
call from a friend of mine, and he's like, I got work. So I went down and managed one of the, I guess we'd say, so North Carolina Emergency Management Operations Center was in Hickory. And
Mhm.
so we were at the Catawba Valley Community College.
Yep.
And so I was managing the lot and the building and the people that we had working. So we had like a staff of 16. And then
Yeah.
my boss was owner of the company. His name's Charlie Williams. You might have run into him. He's big on Pineland. He ran Robin Sage as a green suiter and as a civilian.
As a contractor or
Yeah, as a
something.
contractor a long time, but he might have been finishing up when you were going through Robin Sage, I think it was. But
Yeah.
yeah, I worked out there for 60 days. Crazy. Just whatever I tell people, whatever you saw in the news was way worse in person.
I bet. Yeah, we
And
just went out there, our family up to, well, we were in Todd, so we were north of Asheville, like
Okay.
north of Boone. And even there, they didn't get it that bad, but you saw the destruction, and it's such a fucking travesty of how that
It's
how that shit
terrible.
all went down.
And because of, I have a huge respect for water, and just because of the way I got hurt and everything,
Yeah,
and I could just sitting in those briefings, and then we went out into the affected area. I mean, you had creeks go up 30 feet, a creek, just a
I
little
know, it's
drainage
insane.
ditch. So there's nowhere to go. You can't fuck around with water.
Yeah.
You can't. It was terrible. And but I do feel good in saying that in the position that I did work, even though I had the very tiny piece to play, and just making sure the facilities and the lot and all this were good, and managing the people out there, that North Carolina, FEMA, National Guard, active duty, and every other state agency that came out there came through that place. Everything that could be done was being done while I was there. It was amazing to see.
It's good.
And all that bullshit you heard on the news, that it was just that everything that could feasibly be done by the level I was at, or where I was being done. It was amazing.
Well, that's
Um,
good. That's
and
good. Thank you for, I mean, on behalf of North Carolinians,
it
for
was,
whatever that's worth.
people would
That's
say that to
honorable.
me. I'd be like,
Right.
I owe everything to North Carolina. Like everything, the way I am now and the experience I got in the military and SF, like I owe everything to North Carolina. It was just so cool to go back and do that, especially for that. But terrible. Just it's terrible that happened. It's
Terrible
going to be years,
situation. Yeah.
years until they get it all fixed. But um, last question here. I'm actually going to revise this because I came up with this one the other day. We're going to see how this one sounds. What were you afraid of then, and what are you afraid of now?
Huh. What was I afraid of then, and what was I afraid of now? So I would say probably my biggest fear then was not performing,
Mm-hmm. Really?
failure to
Yeah.
perform. Yeah, failure to perform, to do whatever I had to do. Now, um, it's kind of similar, but like, failing to provide for my family, and keep the train on the tracks, for my family and my household and everything like that.
Yeah. That. Yeah. From back then, I wasn't fucking afraid of anything. Such a douchebag. But now it's I'm afraid of not living up to my potential, like not being as physically
Yeah.
fit as I can, not doing this. Like I don't want to. I hate it when people are like, "Oh, I wish I would have joined," or "I wish I would have done that." Do it. Just do it. Do you have the time? You
Yeah.
have you don't want to be an old person. That's real torture. If you're too old to do something, or you look back and you're like, "I
Yeah.
wish I would have done that." I think that's real torture is going to be like when we're older, is looking back and being weighed down by all the things we wish we would have done.
And this
And
is what I tell my kids. So I coach softball at the varsity level and at the younger level as well for my daughter. And sometimes the girls get injured, or not injured, but hurt, in a game or something like that. Or even my son in sports, they're pretty active, and they get a bruise, they get hit by a ball, a baseball or a softball or something like that. They get a bruise and they're upset and it hurts. I get it, but I keep telling them pain is temporary, regret lasts forever. Don't ever let don't ever let a challenge or something in front of you stop you from being what you want to be. You got to push through. And so I 100% know where you're coming from. And I feel that now. I mean, that's a much better answer than my answer, I think,
well,
because I wish that I wish that I would have went out and did some work out in Western North Carolina. I mean, I wanted to do it, and in fact, with the whole Afghanistan withdrawal thing, like I was this close to being part of that whole thing, but it didn't pan out. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I wish I would have done more. I
It
wish I would
didn't
have done
work
more.
out. I mean, my aunt called me the other day and she's like, I want to donate to this group and that group. I was like, I know who owns that nonprofit. I think they're doing good things, but what you should do is you should go to your church and see if they have a sister church in North Carolina and find out what people do that first. I was like pushing her that way. I was like, I think that dude's, legit. He is an SF guy. I think he's doing great things, but I just don't know. Like, I don't know. So there's still stuff to do. I mean, there's bad things that happen all the time and you can go help. So yeah, but yeah, I don't want to be, and then, but that leads back to, SF life, drinking culture is, it's too much, I think. And that's probably, I've really turned things around since I stopped drinking and just trying to stay on the right track and be inspiration because, when I got out, I said, well, I made this Facebook post that's it. And my sergeant major commented right away. He's like, you're a Green Beret for the rest of your life. And then I need to live up to that. I need to be an example to the people that look up to me and the people in my community. And I need to be out there. And as my lead ambassador at Green Beret Foundation says, you got to be loud. I can't be a quiet professional anymore. I've got to be doing stuff like this or making social media posts or going out and raising money and raising awareness and all this other stuff because nobody else is going to do it. Nobody else is going to create my life for me but me. And you have to work all the time. And we'll see what it provides. But man, I really enjoyed this conversation. I know we went a little long, but I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah,
Great.
it was good. Yeah, I hope I didn't take up too much of your damn time. You're probably going to do a lot of editing on this one.
This, you spoke of, state of the art training back in 06, 07, right? This stuff they have now, it'll just edit it and spit out a version. I just have to download it and post it.
That's great.
I thought it was going to be much more difficult. The most difficult thing is scheduling people to come on. And once we get on here, it's just a conversation. So, but man, I really enjoyed it. Thank you for coming on to Lesser Known Operators. And got anything for me?
No. Thank you for the opportunity to come on here. It was pretty awesome the way it all worked out, Nick. I do appreciate it, man.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. I appreciate it. I'm just going to press pause and then we'll finish up and be on our way. So bye, everybody.
See you later.